uh, uh, well, I think technically it qualified as a charm, but
All right then. There we go. Now you can see it.
Ooh. Do you remember what his strength score was? Didn't he have like a strength of 16 or something like that?
It was 16 or 17. It was one of those things because as a half elf, you don't exactly get strength.
Hmm. Well, you could. I mean, you get a +1 to you get a +2 to charisma and a +1 to whatever other skill that you choose, if I recall
Mm-hmm.
correctly. So he could have gone strength.
Fair enough. Da, 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 da. Yeah. So, we are officially live.
Ooh, we live.
They Live was a good movie.
I've heard of it, but I don't remember what it was about.
Sunglasses that showed the world as how it truly was.
Oh,
And basically, long time ago, there were aliens that came to the Earth and basically enslaved us by putting messages on the walls and stuff that seeped into our brain.
uh-huh, propaganda.
Are you smoking?
They Live, the movie.
Oh.
But yeah, the movie They Live was quite good. Meanwhile, Tiberius. Uh,
Yes.
if this were a movie or a book, I think Tiberius would be one of the more controversial characters in the fact that number one,
The
he was a
player.
barbarian. He was a barbarian half elf, which I don't think a lot of people even go for that. In I
Well, I
like
mean,
I
they have some advantages with the Fey ancestry in that they cannot be put to sleep or charmed.
uh huh.
So, I mean, and then the dark vision. The dark vision honestly would help, because it's easier to hit something that you can. It's easier to hit something when you can see it.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, there are some advantages, you know, but yeah. I mean, when you think barbarian, half elf is not the first thing that you go for. I mean, usually like half orc
Mm-hmm.
barbarian is pretty classic, like Kalu.
Naturally.
Yep, that's pretty classic.
Hey, what's up, big
And then
dog? How you doing?
and then probably uh, probably human. I think would be the most people's second choice.
They don't have a build your own, I don't think.
Tell him to quit interrupting the podcast here.
But it's part of his charm, though. It's part of
Well,
his charm, and
assholes are immune to
he is
charm.
also offering to buy me food.
Well, okay, that's
He
valid.
I
That's valid.
he is offering to get me food, so yes,
I
I
must
I
say,
am willing
you
to.
you you really like that particular
No, I
pant
heard you were
style,
talking about
the
me.
like samurai.
Yeah, I said you're offering to buy me food.
No,
So
no, the stuff before that.
oh,
What's part of my charm?
interrupting me,
Oh, yeah,
interrupting.
that's what I do.
Yeah. uh,
I'm gonna say you really do like that particular style of pants with the
uh, I
like half
do.
skirt or whatever.
I do, but in the context of Hero Forge, I'm gonna let you know a little secret. It's because I don't like a lot of the other pants. I really,
Yeah,
really
I can believe
don't.
that.
Like,
I can believe that.
Hero Forge is really good when it comes to its overall presentation, but the big problem is that for one reason or another, they don't have a lot of variation, you know?
Yeah.
And when I say variation, I don't mean like leather jacket versus tuxedo. I mean like um, being as hyperbolic as I can be. A leather jacket with one sleeve as opposed to two, or a leather jacket that's specifically torn up in the back. Like very minute details that you would never really expect to need, but you might have a character that, just benefits from that.
Mm-hmm.
So, Tiberius, in this instance, I'm going to let you know, I always pictured going shirtless.
Huh?
And I do not know why. Hey, what's up, Beers? How you doing? But yeah, that was the only thing I knew I wanted from this.
Mm-hmm.
I knew he was going to be shirtless. I was kind of going for that a half-elf version of
like the
Conan
freaking
Barbarian.
Diablo, the Diablo 2 barbarian.
More Conan. I was aiming
Okay.
for the half-elf version of Conan, but without
Right.
the loincloth. Because
Right.
that would be a bit too much.
Mm-hmm.
But I went with a very asymmetric design, as you'll no doubt
Yeah.
take
Yeah.
notice here.
Yeah, I noticed that, which kind of works. I mean, in all honesty, if you're going to go for like an asymmetric design, you generally want to have a shield on this on the off side, which, I mean, because that's how, if I recall correctly, that's kind of how the gladiatorial stuff did, is that they would have a pauldron on one. Right. Sorry. They would have a pauldron on one side, but that would be on the side that they had that was their weapon arm, and then they would have the shield on the other side.
If they could have it, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, pauldrons were just a damn good idea, regardless. So.
Well, yeah, block those neck shots. Yeah. You should have given him the headphone. Freaking knife.
Yeah, and there's even the bear head.
Should have left him with the
bear head.
Should have left him with the headphones on. That would be a lot more like what the actual player was like.
No, the player has a cell phone, which is an equipable item in this site.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
There you go. Give him a garland of roses on his head. That's brilliant. Actually, that hairstyle actually kind of fits him.
Right? I thought so, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't remember how long I stressed over the hair for him, but I ended up going with this just because, it kind of fits his personality from what personality we did get from him. Tiberius, I strangely enough, is the first player that actually had some form of development. The other characters in this series of Lost Players had like 1 or 2 sessions, and that was it. Tiberius actually lasted for a while, and
he was with us for about 8 or 10 months or something like that. I mean, it was a while.
It was at the very least half a year. Very least half a year, and you'll notice here I knew instantly that.
Yes, the Giant Slayer.
Yep, I went with the Giant Slayer axe because I couldn't remember what weapon he wielded before that. And
I think he had a great sword initially, but yeah, he eventually. I think that was in like within the first couple months of play that he got that Giant Slayer.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So, and it was amazing that you actually did manage to get a little bit of backstory and a little bit of play from him, because I mean he was one of those players that would sit there on his phone and be like, yeah, okay, sure, and then wouldn't set it down until he got into combat.
Mm-hmm. In all fairness, though, I think that he was expecting something else ultimately. Like, I think he was expecting more of like a Warhammer as opposed to a I don't even watch the show anymore, but like Critical Role, I think he was expecting more Warhammer rather than that.
Okay.
Which is fine. It's totally fine. I just I do wonder what the situation would have been like had he stuck around, because again, unlike the previous 2 episodes where we're talking about Fiona and Osiris and Boo Boo, like, we actually know for a fact that Tiberius was a very confrontational character.
Yeah.
Like he did not really care for organization. He didn't really care for personal space. Like, if he felt like it was something that needed to be done, he was gonna confront you right from the very beginning. And I feel like that would have been very interesting to see in regards to like later realizations for Degrizniak and his family issues, and uh, the Tsar of Sturmwind too. That would have been
Yeah.
interesting to see.
Oh my. Oh my.
Mm-hmm.
I assume he probably would have lost his head, honestly.
Maybe he might have. I think he would have had fun with it though.
Hmm.
Yeah. So a bit of backstory. Tiberius's character was the second player that I had asked to join the campaign, and it was more in passing, I guess it was, because with the first one, she basically just said we need more than two players, and I was like, "Hey, you want to play?" And he's like, "Sure." But he looked through the book and he found a combination that he enjoyed, and something else that I kind of liked about it was that his class fit in perfectly with his backstory, in that he came from a family of like 8 siblings, 9 siblings, his parents and grandparents all living in one house.
Yeah. And he basically became a barbarian, so he could get out of home. He get out of the house.
Well, he was stressed up enough as is, so all of that rage from his family issues come forth in his combat style,
Hmm.
and he and his like his personality also comes from the fact that he doesn't like loud places.
Hmm.
He likes being quiet, but at the same time, like if you want to get a word in edgewise, you have to be direct. You have to, not be subtle. You have to fucking say what you want.
Yeah, it's kind of smack him across the face with it. Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my roommate's still playing with the cat.
Yeah. No, he was definitely an interesting character, and it did kind of work.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I mean, you're right though. I mean, you definitely don't expect, a halfling race is not one that you would expect for a barbarian. Like I said, you probably want to go, at least as far as how things work in the book. You either want to go half orc, dragonborn, um, you know, or human. Yeah, the
Mm-hmm.
the, the half elf, because we hadn't no one had at that point. Um, no one had gotten Xanathar, so we didn't have access to any of the other
Mm-hmm.
interesting races. And let's be honest, a barbarian is one of the easier classes to play. You know, well, it can be. If you're in a magical battle, you're kind of at a bit of a disadvantage, shall we say? But
Mm-hmm.
uh, but yeah, he went with barbarian. It was one of the simpler ones to play, and um, he did a pretty good job at it. I mean, I know that there were a number of uh, battles that we had where he was the decisive player for those battles. Um,
It's one of the benefits of having a barbarian or a fighter in the early levels.
oh yes,
Very
oh yeah,
simplistic, very useful throughout the entire fight. Uh,
yep. I know
Actually,
that.
coming from real quick, these poses. It's an interesting point of fact. Hero Forge had a quote cowardly stance with the two weaponed items, like the pole arms.
Yeah.
They don't anymore. They got rid of them.
Uh,
They
well, I
got
wonder if.
well,
I,
they got rid of the name, but the pose is still there,
okay.
which is weird because like they just changed the
Well,
name.
it's a matter of selling points, I suppose.
Perhaps like no one ever
You
wants
know,
to no one wants to choose the cowardly stance.
right? And you wouldn't have that for the martial characters. You would want to have that for like the wizard or the sorcerer or something like that, especially the really 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 squishy ones.
Mm-hmm.
So
But yeah, I forget which one it was, but I was looking through it and there was no cowardly stance, and I'm like, interesting.
well, not that that would have fit for Tiberius anyway.
Oh, it really wouldn't have. That dude, for better or worse, had no fucking fear.
Right.
He really fucking didn't.
I think he probably more because he probably wasn't smart enough to be scared. Well, I mean,
There's a
in all
difference
honesty,
between smart and wise. Let's be real
very
here.
true,
He wasn't wise enough to be scared.
very true, very true.
But in all seriousness, he probably would have been in pretty good graces with Black Pete had he kept that up. Black
Yeah.
Pete would know, like, oh, you're not scared. Ooh, I like
Well,
that.
well, I bet I would be willing to bet that he probably would have taken at least one or two ranks in Rogue eventually,
You
probably
think?
so he could. Oh yeah, probably so he could like sneak up behind someone, rage, and then like do rage and sneak attack damage.
Yeah,
Because with knowing the player, he probably would have tried to maximize the damage as much as possible.
which is fair enough. Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, there's nothing wrong with that play style at all. But yeah, no, I could definitely see him get along very well with Black Pete, and then possibly at some point in time picking up like a couple of things in Rogue. Yeah, I'm gonna rage, but I'm gonna do it quietly. All right, let's play a song by let let's play a song by Quiet Riot here.
There you go. Yeah, right here. I think this is a perfect representation of how detailed Hero Forge can be, even in
Hmm.
its current state.
Hmm.
Like as soon as I had the idea for the sword on the belt and the pose that he had with his with the axe, I realized, ooh, he can do the same fucking thing that I do, and I know a lot of other people do when they're at the Renaissance Festival and they've got this sword hanging on their hip. Just fucking
Hmm.
put your hand on there and let it rest.
Oh yes, yeah. No, I've had to do that myself. So yeah.
So it took a while, and I know that it's a sped up version here, but it took a while to get that comfortable spot where its hand actually looks like it like could be resting in that spot.
Hmm. I have noticed that one of the things that you do when you are designing characters on Hero Forge is that you do try to make the positions look as static as you can. You know,
A little bit, yeah.
I mean, and that's not a critique in any form or fashion. It's just I mean, because you just want to make it look like they could like actually be holding a pose.
Yeah.
Almost like like
An
if
idle
someone's paint, if
stance.
someone's well, yeah, or if someone is like painting a portrait of somebody, you want to have them have a stance that they can actually hold. You don't want to have them like posing on one leg because they're not going to be able
Mm-hmm.
to hold it for more than 30 seconds or so, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I do tend to do that. I think, yeah, because if I'm being honest, it's partially to do with thinking about uh, is it possible for this thing to be sitting next to a collective of other minis without
hmm,
taking up 3 minis worth of space?
right.
Yeah, because I don't think you've really noticed it, but the collection of minis I have right now, uh, there are one or two of them that are larger than the others, and
Yeah, yeah.
so yeah, it genuinely takes up a lot of space just with those ones alone.
Well, let's see
But so far, like
the cleric,
this is
the cleric, and the
Tiberius.
feature.
This is
Yeah,
Tiberius. What do you think?
I think that works pretty well. I like the fact that you have that book with them there.
Mm-hmm.
That yes, that definitely goes to that definitely speaks to the character's backstory. So,
Mm-hmm.
and pardon me if I misremember here, but I mean, as I recall, he one of the languages that he spoke or that he chose to spoke was Abyssal, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you as a DM were like, well, if you could justify that, I'll let you do it.
Mm-hmm.
Which is kind of interesting because it did get us out of a jam or two.
Mm-hmm. It did.
Um, yeah, so he decided that his character at some point that Tiberius at some point in time in his backstory had stuck into oh come on
The
what was the
Grand Wizard
wizard's
Nazardine.
yes Nazardine it snuck into Nazardine's study and had picked up a book with um, he had picked up a book with Abyssal in it,
Mm-hmm.
and like open it up, and then is this the wrong one?
Oh, it's the right one. This is
Uh,
Almighty.
oh, okay. Oh, all right. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
so he picks up this book of with Abyssal in it, opens it up, and it kind of downloads the data into his brain, and then like he like passed out and had a nosebleed, and then
Nazarene was
Nazardine
none too
found him
happy.
and was not too happy about it. Right. So,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no,
oh,
yeah.
those are epic horns.
Oh, they are horn. They are nice epic horns. But yeah, the reason why I'm including these two together is because I had designed, um, I can't remember whom. Oh, that's right. Okay, I had designed Almighty after the fact that I'd already that I sorry after the fact that I forgot that Almighty and Tiberious share the same player, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm only getting one per player.
Well, yeah.
So I was like, oh shit. I'm gonna put them together in one video so that I can have some help deciding which one to get for him. Because I'm getting the other two, the villain campaign characters specifically, because I feel like they had a bit more fun with them than they did their hero ones. But so yeah.
Yeah, I did notice that Adam had quite a bit of fun with Faceless.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if that was because that we decided to start at level 10 or 9 or 10.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but yeah, but I mean, at the higher levels, you do get more
More options.
options. Yes.
Also, fuck these horns. Just fuck the horns and the process of just moving them around until you get the spot you want.
Mm-hmm.
Because it is so difficult. It was just, oh. But in any case, but yeah, we can move on to Almighty in a little bit because we're
Yeah.
covering two of them at once.
Unfortunately,
Yes,
unfortunately, we only had him. He was only in what, like one session.
I think he was in 2 sessions.
Okay. Yeah.
He was in 2 sessions, but
He was in the session. He was in the session where you first introduced the Herald,
mm-hmm.
which
It
was
was
an interesting.
yeah. It was an attempt. It was the first draft of how the Herald could be utilized,
Mm-hmm.
which as soon as it happened and as soon as it like progressed, I realized, yeah, this thing is not going to work. It's far too pace breaking.
Mm-hmm.
Way too far pace breaking. Looking back on it now, I feel like it could work as like, oh, that you get teleported to the Herald's dimension. Here's a puzzle you have to solve
Mm-hmm.
while he's slowly killing you.
Uh huh.
Solve the puzzle in this amount of time and you don't die and you come out with something, good. But you fail, you die.
Mm-hmm.
But even then, like I much prefer how the Herald is handled now than he was before. I much
Well,
prefer how he was
I
before.
mean, I can't necessarily disagree with you, um, but unfortunately, we haven't seen the Herald in a few months. Well, real
Oh.
time, not game time, but
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. But the Almighty was a cleric of the Traveler, so I knew I had to
yeah,
give him something.
I think he had watched a little bit too much Critical Role.
I don't actually think he watched Critical Role at the time.
Really?
I don't
Okay.
think he did. No, I'm fairly certain that was all Osiris's player. I think that was all. I think it
Okay.
was all there. But I don't doubt that he probably did after that fact.
Hmm.
I don't think he wouldn't have. But I think he just kind of liked the idea of this god that is not necessarily good or evil aligned, just kind of a god that travels
Hmm.
something of chaos. Um,
Someone of a
yeah,
neutral, chaotic neutral alignment.
something like that. Like looking it up because the one thing that I, as a DM, very strongly enforce is that clerics and paladins do not shy away from their god's colors.
Hmm.
So like if at all possible, and especially if they can get their stuff custom made, they're gonna incorporate their colors into their design. They're gonna incorporate something of their god's motif into their design because they're proud of their faith.
Yes.
So I found out that the so I found out that the traveler is kind of like a bone color and purple.
So kind of
Like the
a
symbol.
somewhat creamy gray and purple, huh?
Yeah, like the symbol for the traveler that I could see was, it almost looked like a skull that was hollowed out.
Hmm.
It like 3 points, two hollow points in the middle. It had some spikes near the top, and it had like purple lines and circles in it. But the actual sigil was very bone like. So
Hmm.
you'll notice later on in this recording that I kind of go with the bone color for the armor and the purple for the decal work. But I ultimately did kind of like how both of these turned out, and it made it all the more difficult to choose which one that the player would like more. Because
Hmm.
obviously Tiberius is the one that he played the most of, and would probably have the
Right.
most like sentimental value for. You know, but Almighty, the Almighty is like, he's bombastic, he's extravagant, he's a fucking cleric. He's
Yeah.
got fucking magic.
Hmm.
So I honestly have no idea which one he'd prefer.
And God is on his side.
Yeah,
Exactly.
I have the power of D20 and God on my side.
I called the sergeant.
Shit.
Right. They can go either way.
Right.
No. Yeah.
So like I just it's one of those things I'm not quite sure anymore because the paladin look is obviously so much simpler to ultimately decide what way to go with, because you've got the
Yeah. You
like
just need
you
like
need
heavy
plates.
armor,
Yeah.
like plate
Sorry,
mail.
not
Give
paladin,
them a
cleric.
tabard.
Cleric. I might have
Yeah.
said paladin.
Yeah. Because they could do they could do medium armor,
Mm-hmm.
light and medium armor. And then are you going to give them a tabard of some kind?
A tabard, huh?
Well, that would you're right though. That would be more like a paladin. A paladin would definitely have a tabard.
Oh, you underestimate my abilities, sir. Like Almighty was. I get the feeling that all of the villain characters are going to be fun to design,
Yeah.
because kind of like we had discussed earlier, not necessarily in any podcast, but the fact that no, this wasn't with you. This was with Kalu's player. We had discussed how much we enjoy the fact that in the hero campaign, all of the characters are very different in terms of their color schemes and their patterns.
Yeah.
You've got the dull tones, you've got the vibrant tones, and you've got the tones that are kind of in between. But the villain characters, they're all matte colors. They're all very simplistic, very earthy tones. And the only character that had a vibrant color was going to be the Paladin of Vengeance. He was the only one,
Mm.
and he was the
Odo.
cleric state. Yeah, Odo. He was a very clerical. You know, I literally have the power of a god on my side. Run,
Yeah. Well, I
bitch.
mean, it does. Yeah, and it does make sense. Well, paladins, their power doesn't necessarily come from their god. Their power comes from their oath.
But but you get the point.
Yes.
The fact that the only character that had colors to himself necessarily was the one who had
Well,
to hold some kind of loyalty to a colorful god.
I would actually like beg to differ because I thought smoke was relatively colorful.
Well,
You know.
dark purple and black.
Yeah.
It's still very dark tones and very, like I can literally just hide in the shadows of the forest because my colors are one with the darkness.
Hmm.
And then of course you've got you know uh, Saber and Wraith. You've got Saber and Wraith, and both of them have like an earthy green or like a rusted chain type of color to them.
Hmm.
It's very uniform and it's very militaristic, but at the same time, it gives off uh, this tone of, oh fuck, these
Uh-huh.
guys do not care about cleaning their shit, not because they don't take care of it, but because they know it's going to get covered in blood in about 30 seconds.
Right. Very utilitarian, almost.
Exactly, and you know, it's just I loved that about the differences between the heroes and the villain characters, and I like to think that by the end of this coloring that kind of antithesis for the Almighty kind of stands out in that regard.
Hmm.
But anyway, we can get back to the Almighty in a bit because you've only got about 3.5 hours left.
Yeah, we got to hurry this up, shouldn't we?
So Tiberius was, like we mentioned before, he was one of about a family of 11 plus the grandparents, plus or minus any other type of extended family that may or may not be in the same fucking house. And he was one of
They're
the
all in the same
only,
house.
yeah, he was one of two players that was already indoctrined into the Silver Bear Guild, which over the course of the next couple of months kind of just dissolved. Like no one actually had connections to him anymore, because all the
Well,
players who did left.
yeah, it
And
did kind of come a little bit irrelevant.
it did, which was unfortunate because the Heroes Guild ultimately was going to be very connected to. Oh yeah, I had completely forgotten to give this guy gloves, so that's why I'm doubling back in that recording. Like, wait, this man has gloves.
Uh,
Quick, go back.
he
But
needs his gauntlets.
you need something to protect those dainty hands.
Yeah.
So, but the Heroes Guild was, it was going to have a presence in where you were going, and it was going to have a storyline that could have been, tapped in on, and if no one was connected to it, it would, it would
I've
have,
been, yeah, no one really
it
cared.
would just, it would feel like it ultimately did, where we just had to reintroduce you guys to the guild and reintroduce the potentials of having you guys actually have some kind of standing to it, which eventually was rectified when Alvin joined in and he was a member of the guild too,
Hmm.
though maybe not one of the more standout versions, but
Yeah,
like they're not sending their best, okay.
yeah. He's the one that they can stand to lose. So
Yeah. Orion wouldn't like that though. Like a little bit of trivia for Orion, he genuinely likes Alvin and what he can
mhm.
bring to the guild. Uh, it's one of those, like you said before in like Fiona's episode, he's kind of a dick, but he's the type of dick that understands that hey, playing it squeaky clean is gonna be fine and good for the public vision. But what exactly are you supposed to do when you face an evil that you can't defeat by just means? Do you stain your hands with evil to destroy evil? Or do you stand by your convictions and allow evil to reign?
Mm.
He's definitely one of those characters where he is not afraid in any way to get his hands dirty to get the job done. And if his reputation falters,
So be it.
the guild's reputation will survive his misdeeds.
Hmm. Yeah.
Especially considering that for the most part, agents aren't nearly as in the public eye as the wizards and the warriors are.
Hmm.
The agents are scouts basically. That's
Yeah.
basically all they do. But
Well, everybody needs eyes and ears in order to see what's going on. So I mean that doesn't just because they're scouts doesn't necessarily diminish their value or function.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah,
And I get because of that. I honestly think that Tiberius and Orion would get along swell. I
I
honestly think that those two would have gotten along pretty damn well.
I think so.
Yeah, because
And
we
yeah, well, yeah, I honestly I think Tiberius and Alvin probably would have killed each other though at some point in time,
I don't
just
think they
because
would have killed each other, but I do think Alvin would be pushing it to that level.
it would.
Like he
Well,
would be
they would.
pushing it as far as he could go.
Well, yeah, that's the thing that they would have gotten into a practical joke off and
Mm-hmm.
just like cranked it up and cranked it up and cranked it up until eventually, yeah, it would have gotten like completely out of hand.
Mm-hmm. So
You know,
you set the
in all
building on fire
honesty,
to pull off this prank, and
right?
all of the world leaders come rushing out.
and
They were in the
you are
middle of a peace conference.
yes, and now you are
You
going
are
to be jailed
wanted.
for life because of for attempted assassination of everyone in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Minor details.
Oh, real quick, this part right here, this is a showcase of how messed up Hero Forge can be. Because I go back and forth on it a couple times, but look closely at that pauldron that I'm trying to move around. Like,
How it's intersecting his horn.
well, that too, but more specifically, I don't know if I go back to it at some point, but the pauldron, as a result of the pose that it was in, starts up much farther up the arm, and as soon as you click on the movement icon to move it down slightly, it jerks all the
Uh
way
huh.
down to where his physical shoulder is.
Uh huh.
There is no in between for that, and you can't make it that way.
Hmm.
So that's kind of stupid. Like, why is it that you put the pauldron all the way up here if you're not going to allow me to get it to that point naturally, like with your own system?
Right. Well, and pauldrons are pretty difficult to place anyway because, well, yeah, you start raising your arms. I mean, in all honesty, I think what we classically think of as pauldrons are probably not how things were really used
They
in
were.
medieval times. Well, I mean, well,
Well,
yeah, but they were used on horseback per se, right? You wouldn't necessarily have someone walking around with you know big side things because as soon as you try to raise your arms,
okay.
they're
No.
you know what I'm saying?
What you're referring to is um, the stylized pauldrons.
Yeah.
Like pauldrons on themselves are literally just shoulder guards. Like that
Yes.
is where the
Exactly. Yeah.
definition
I'm
begins
talking
and
about the one
ends.
like what we have here.
Yes,
You know, the
this
ones
one is
with the
definitely a more stylized pauldron. Now there
yeah.
were knights, obviously, that had pauldrons like that. Whether or not they went into battle with them or not, that kind of depends on where you're looking and when, because anyone who's done research on medieval knight armor, or more specifically just knight armor, shall we say, attachments,
Uh huh.
they've done some weird stuff. Like, obviously, there is a suit of armor with a cockpiece.
Uh huh.
Like, literally, just it's right there on the groin, and it's sticking straight out.
Well, it's called a cod piece.
Oh no, there's a difference between cod piece and a cock piece. This one was a straight up cock piece. So when it comes to armor and what the armor would look like, something like this is not outside of the realm of possibility, but I
Mhm.
will admit that these pauldrons specifically would probably be like a rarity at the
Mhm.
very least. Also, I realized I forgot to put this on loop. So we're just going to go back to the beginning. And loop. There we go.
So I'm a fan of the sword and sorcery anime called Slayers,
Mm-hmm.
and so they did a number of they did the regular like story arc for the actual anime itself. And then they did a bunch of OAV movies,
Mm-hmm.
and they introduced a new character in the OAV movies who was another sorceress, Naga the White Serpent, and she went with the classic evil sorceress scheme, which means that she had this like strap leather, like swimsuit looking garb. You
Hey,
know how
when
they
you
you know how
can when you can summon a meteor from the sky, I don't think you have to worry about anything hitting you.
oh yeah. Well, and that was the thing is that was like her whole shtick. But she had these like
But then Guy Sensei showed up.
yeah, but she had these like spiked pauldrons, right?
Mm-hmm.
And early in the movies, because there's like 6 or 7 of them, she does this whole like reach up to the sky thing to cast a spell, and the spikes on the pauldrons, stick into her head and disrupt her from casting the spell. So it's hilarious because she does this dramatic pose with her arms above her head, and then you hear that boing, whatever sound that they use for when something pokes something, and she just kind of freezes, and the main character's like, "What happened?" She's like, "Oh," it's like, "Wait, did your pauldron just stick you in the head?" She goes, "Uh huh." So, I mean, and I'm not objecting to the fact that you gave Almighty pauldrons, not in any form or fashion, but that is one of the things. Like if you're going to have him posing with his arms up, that is something that you're going to have to be cautious of. Is that you don't necessarily want the pauldrons like cutting into a scalp or anything.
Yeah, yeah, I get you. The picture I just showed you, just sent you, was something that Omen wants to eventually design. Much the same way as my shoulder cape, but far more realistic and not nearly as like bam in your face.
Is that going to be out of leather, or is that going to be?
If we could, we would make it out of like legit chain, like the strap.
Mm-hmm.
We would make it a legit chain strap, and we would put a leather pauldron underneath the fabric right there, so that you've got that leather pauldron there, but the fabric alone looks like it's just kind of there. And the
Kind of like the shoulder pads and a suit coat.
yes, and the cape would continue down a bit on that chain as it kind of wraps around. Like I think it would end maybe 2 to 3 inches past the spine.
Okay.
So you'd have that cape all the way there. And I'm sorry, chat, that you can't see it. I don't know how to properly show that off.
Well, you could do it. You could do it.
Completely messing with it. I can edit it and put it in the YouTube video, so I can just flat out show you what it looks like. But I forget what game it's from. But he played that game before, and he really liked that cape design. And since we're making them anyway, figured we.
Yeah, that is pretty cool.
I've also found out, due to my own big brain, that I fucked up on my initial shoulder cape. Like, it was a good prototype, obviously, but I realized I have needle and thread. I didn't have to rivet the leather in place. I could have just sewn the damn things together, and it would have looked so much better.
Well, for the next next
absolutely.
time.
And I've already had the idea to shrink it down so that it's not nearly as, bulky, not nearly as in your face, and obviously allow a lot more freedom of movement. Back to Tyberious.
Yes.
I feel like we're doing him a disservice because we keep on getting distracted. But at the same time, that's kind of the sad story for Tyberious. The main reason why he left was because his player would constantly be on his phone for one reason or another. And there were several instances. Yeah, there were several instances where it was like his mother was in the hospital for something like that, and that is totally understandable. Like,
legitimate reasons.
Yeah, whenever it's like a family issue, or if it's something like that, or like, for instance, if you are facing financial issues and you need to figure that out, real world stuff gets in the way, right? And you definitely should, take care of that.
Absolutely.
It was the fact that we could never really tell which one it was. It would happen so often that we could never fucking tell which one it was.
Well, and let's, I mean, yeah, and plus you can't always tell when something is like a legitimate issue or if they're just like spinning a cock and bull story, so we don't get too angry that they're not there. But which, and I have to be honest. I mean, I can deal with, hey, I don't quite feel like, like coming in today, or I'm just tired. I mean, it's a bit of a lame duck excuse, I'll grant you, but I mean, that's still
At
it's a
least you gave us the dignity of saying, "Hey, you're not really going to get me today. I'm just not feeling it."
uh-huh,
At least you gave us the dignity of
right,
telling us this. But when you show up
right.
and you give us the impression you're going to be a part of it, and then you just kind of don't,
You just kind of
it
sit around on your
yeah,
phone all the time. Yeah.
it can feel disingenuous, and it can feel very, what's the word I'm looking for? Insulting.
Yeah. Disrespectful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
which is very
So,
unfortunate because again, especially in the early days, Tiberius was the odd one out, both in class and in personality, because everyone else was kind of going the more respectful route, but Tiberius was the one guy who would cut through the bullshit. There would not be any floweriness to it. It'd just be like, the fuck's going on?
uh-huh.
Like he had no trouble whatsoever standing up to the guild masters, 5 level 20 plus bonus boon ability characters. He had no trouble whatsoever standing up to all fucking 5 of them. And I think the only one he didn't piss off intentionally was Trugar. I think Trugar was the only character that he didn't intentionally piss off. And the only
hmm
reason why he got mad, not pissed off, was because the two of you got into a fight slinging magic at each other. And he's all like, enough of this.
Well, let's be honest. Tiberius did go out of his way to actually piss off Roland.
I know
And
that. I
and
know.
and and yeah, so I mean, yeah, there's really not much. Yeah, no, that's Roland could not have let that slide and still call himself a druid. It's just what it was.
Yeah, and I can understand that. I feel like, and this is me playing a bit of a devil's advocate here. At the time when it happened, I was a bit too caught up in the humor of it to really say one thing or another. But
hmm
with the recent reminder that outside of, like the NPCs, Roland is the oldest and supposedly the most wisest. So it honestly kind of feels like if I were to like stretch it just a bit, it kind of feels like Roland could have benefited from giving him like a warning, like a very stern warning, and you know, just kind of let him,
Well,
because it at the time it happened, I almost got the impression of two teenagers. You know, you kind of feel where I'm coming from here, or no?
sure. I mean, in some respects, but um, there's also the fact that he hadn't necessarily honed his ability to shrug off insults, being not necessarily being in you know Roland having grown up in the environment that he did and having had the mentor that he did. Um, she her methodology was a lot more. Um, you know, if I challenge you, you better rise up to it. Otherwise you're going to be in big trouble. So, and he kind of saw that not just as an insult, but a challenge as well, which is part of the reason that he reacted the way that he did.
And again, like that's all fine and good, especially considering like during the earlier days, the characters themselves haven't quite yet been finalized and
Well, and
ironed
as
out.
players, we were honestly still trying to feel out how things were going anyway. How am I supposed to react to this situation? How am I supposed to react to this situation? And trying to stay true to what their characters are.
Mm-hmm.
And a druid might be a spellcaster, but they're quite a bit. They are a rather different spellcaster type than even like sorcerer or wizard. You know,
Yeah.
so um, yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, the biggest tell of who Tiberius was would be right there. And for those of you who don't know, which would be everyone other than us, Roland being the druid and Tiberius being the barbarian don't exactly get along in terms of like their styles of how they approach things. And in an attempt to play a practical joke, Tiberius went out and hunted. So he successfully found a bear, killed the bear, and wanted to skin the animal. We had him roll for a survival check, and he failed. It's not failure enough to say that he couldn't tear it up, but he tore it up rather than actually skinned it. So he had this very bloody, very unfinished, very not so well done bear hide with fur and its head everywhere. So what he does, he approaches the druid, whose back is to him, and drapes the still bloody hide of a bear onto a druid.
Yep.
Now, if I remember correctly, many of the players were laughing at it, but they were also very understanding of, that was such a disrespectful move, buddy. Why did you do that?
Mm-hmm.
But as a result of this, the druid...
Roland saw this as an attack not just upon his person, but on the very foundations of his faith. So yeah, he didn't react very. He didn't react very well. He turned around and started throwing cantrips at him.
We have a lot of instances of someone disrespecting a belief, and the other person just going after them, don't we?
Yeah, and
we got Tiberius and Roland, and then we've got Alvin and Omen.
Yeah.
Oh boy. Oh boy. Oh, my food's here.
Ah, food is good.
Indeed. Quality sealed. I mean, I'll have this later because it's rude to podcast and stream.
Yeah, you don't really want to have grease all over your keyboard and mouse.
Oh, indeed. And actually, yeah, that's the thing that I should mention here and now. Like, I don't think I've ever gotten tired necessarily of Papa John's food, but I will say this: like, if you get it wrong, it really goes wrong with the amount of grease on there. Like, this food and grease do not really mix. Like, oh my gosh, I don't remember when it was because I've been there I had been there for a while at that point. But like, I made something, or someone else made something, and the customer didn't show up, so we had it, and it was so fucking greasy that I just put it down after taking like 2 bites, threw in the garbage, and walked the fuck off.
So I would say, I would give it. So that limits it to a handful of things. So either the customer ordered a double pepperoni extra cheese.
It was the fucking chicken things. It was the chicken bits, but with the cheese. I think that's what it was.
What?
It's the thing that that Little Manager would make.
Kayla?
Yes. It might have been that, because I feel like that's the only thing that had...
Were they sauce chicken poppers?
Yeah, but we would put like... we would put the garlic butter on there so that you could put the cheese on top, and it would stick.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, like...
Okay.
But yeah, but anyway. So Tiberius was very much like that, where one of the guild masters is a guy named Black Pete, and his introduction was taking the form of someone else. And of course, you know, I had you guys make a perception check. One of the players rolls on that 1 and gets whiplash from looking around too quickly. It's like, oh! But
1d4 whiplash damage.
I don't think I had him roll damage, but he was definitely need a massage.
Right.
But so
yeah, and he was the monk. He was the monk too, the one that's supposed to be, calm, collected, and move with grace and all that, and he just nope.
Yeah. So eventually, Black Pete descends from where he was, and as he's walking by, mid-step, changes into someone else. And yes, Kitty. What is it, Kitty? What is it? Yeah. You smell the food? You can't have that food. That's my food.
I got stuff with no onions on it, kitty.
Oh, he's got stuff with no onions, Kitty. If you want that. Oh, you just want to fight? Is that what you want? You want to fight, Kitty? You want to fight? Well, too bad. I'm talking. Oh, he's not happy. Okay, what's something I can throw that'll get his attention? I can throw this.
You need to get him like a jingle bell, one of those like sleigh bells. Oh yeah.
We did. We've got these hollowed out spheres with jingles inside them that we just toss his way, and he fucking loves those. So one of the people that he turns into, I believe, is Tiberius's mother.
Yeah,
And,
I think it was. Yeah.
And he says something a little cocky, a little condescending, but mostly in a challenging. I think it would be a good idea if you eavesdropped on the Guildmaster's speeches in there. Might be a good idea. So Tiberius just picks up one of his throwing knives and chucks it at him. He chucks a knife at the Guildmaster's back. But he rolled an attack, and to be fair, it was a high attack. Unfortunately, Black Pete, being a level 20, class undefined, has a higher armor class than that. So I had him roll a dexterity. He rolled high enough. He catches the blade in his hand. He makes his own attack. Nat 20. He throws he chucks the throwing dagger back into the scabbard on Tiberius's side. just to flex. Just to flex on this little guy. Like, yeah. You can try to sneak up on me. It's not going to work. I can sheath this blade of yours from about 30 feet away. Want to see me do it again? But
I must say, you make a lot of use of the color blue. I've noticed, which is not necessarily a normal color that you would find.
In this instance, it was because Tiberius was a member of the guild.
Okay.
And guild members will typically be expected to wear some kind of blue and silver on their attire.
Okay.
So if it weren't for the blue, I would have had no idea what kind of color scheme to give this guy. But because of the association he had with the guild, it became fairly obvious. Okay, we'll go with a nice blue color for him. Makes enough sense. So if ever you're wondering why I use blue a lot, it's usually in connection to the Silver Bear Guild. If it's not the Silver Bear Guild, it will typically be responsible for... Sorry, what is responsible will typically be a faith, a god, or some kind of, like...
Some other organization.
Yeah. It'll typically be an organization of sorts, unless it's a player character, and the player character just wants blue. Kind of like Morgan's Morgan's player. He just wanted a bunch of purple on there. Which was very fine. It was good enough. Tiberius was around when the Grisniak was here. Tiberius was the type of character who I imitated quite well, I think, when he wasn't around. Because he was the guy who 1v1'd a gargoyle and managed to take him down.
Yeah.
And thank you, Giant Slayer.
Yeah, no kidding. We started adding up all the damage that he was doing with like one hit, and we're like, oh my, you just did 25 damage in one hit. Well then. Meanwhile, the rest of us are over there struggling with the second gargoyle.
Yeah. Yeah. So he was around when the vampire replacement for Osiris, because if you remember from last week, we discussed that Boo Boo the Jolly had to leave because of work and school, and the roommate didn't really feel right with just continuing with Osiris if Boo Boo wasn't going to be around because they're basically adopted brothers.
Mm-hmm.
So, we talked for a little bit and we discussed that, okay, yeah, we can totally make something of like a vampire if you really want to. Now, again, this was a mistake
Yeah,
on
because
my
they're like, I
part.
found this homebrew
Yeah.
character.
Yeah, it
Well,
was a
in
mistake
all
on my
honesty, it
part.
wasn't. It
It would have
wasn't.
worked. It would have
Yeah,
worked because there wasn't all that much different about it, other than like the can't go out
the,
in daylight. Uh,
which
like
would have been
if
great traveling
yeah,
from city to city.
like if you really wanted to, if I remember correctly, there was this rule where you could not enter in like a home without permission. You know,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and
Well,
I think there
functionally,
was
I mean, that's a lot
like
of.
a cantrip that as a vampire you would know. I think it was like suggestion, like you would like know. It was something to that effect in relation to like in relation to the suggestive powers that a vampire has. It was
Mm-hmm.
something like that, and I had actually given thought to the idea of have you ever seen Castlevania on Netflix?
No.
Well, one of the main characters, Alucard, he has a sword that he
A la
can
carte in
control.
Castlevania.
Yeah,
Ah,
he
okay.
has the ability to control. He has this sword, this silver sword that he can control with his mind.
Okay.
So I was genuinely considering putting that in as well.
Said my father does not use magic weapons. Never said I didn't.
Well, at
So
least as far
I
yeah.
was
I mean,
honestly thinking about giving Iona, the vampire character, a sword that could act like a flying sword type of thing, where like as a bonus action you can will this thing like a spiritual weapon,
mm-hmm.
basically.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that would actually would have been a very an easy way to describe it. Like as a vampire, you can endow one weapon with the spiritual weapon attributes, you know, and you can have this one weapon fly around you at a like maximum of 30 feet, and it can make melee attacks do 1d8 damage plus your charisma modifier or something, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And we never actually got to combat with Iona,
Yeah, unfortunately.
but regardless, the Tiberius was there for that, and despite the fact that his player was not there for that, I like to think I nailed him on the head when all of you were trying to figure out what to do with a vampire who needs blood, and Tiberius just left the cathedral, walked down the hall, picked up the corpse of the Duragar dwarf, walked back in, and goes, "Here." Why the fuck are we arguing about this? Drink that.
Well, roll with roll at least the druids have an innate distrust and like a innate dislike for undead. So not
Mm-hmm.
just zombies but also vampires.
Yeah, I believe we covered this last week actually when we were
Yeah.
talking about this. But I think I hit him square on the money
Yeah.
when I did
Yeah.
that.
That's definitely something that he would do. I think
Mm-hmm.
the yeah, I don't think it was so much I don't want this vampire drinking from me. I think it was more, should we even let this vampire live or should we just put the damn cover back?
So yeah, he was around. Do you remember when? Oh yeah, he left. Uh, he was more asked to leave if he couldn't put his phone down. That was
Yeah.
basically it. Like I told him that I didn't want to like single him out or anything like that, but he's always on his phone. It kind of feels a little distracting for the rest of us. Do you think you could stop doing that or something like that? And I think he had just kind of, as soon as he heard me say that, I think he just kind of realized it himself that he wasn't enjoying it as much as he thought he would,
Hmm.
and which is fine. It's totally fine. It just kind of sucks that we had to find out in that particular way, as opposed to like just some other method.
Hmm.
Strangely enough, the guy that was playing Giorno all eventually went down that same path where he would take out his phone and play different games while stuff was happening. I don't think it ever got so bad to the point where like it was in a conversation where his character was involved specifically, but the fact that he was just pulling out his phone and like playing a game was enough to make me go,
Yeah, which was unfortunate because the characters that he did play were had some really fun stuff going on. I know that Faceless. I think he really enjoyed playing Faceless.
I look
I think
forward to
he
designing
even enjoyed.
Faceless.
Yeah, he did. He even did enjoy playing Giorno, especially against that
The
frickin'
Flynn.
Flynn.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Yeah, we're just gonna cook you. Heat metal.
Mm-hmm.
Oof.
So, but the last event that I remember Tiberius being a part of was during the introduction to Gorn's Hand and the Goblin Slayer esque
Hmm.
encounter where you've got these
Oh, I
hordes of
remember that one.
goblins. You've got these hordes of goblins basically raping women and killing the men and all that
Yeah,
stuff.
we're just straight up just imagine episode 1 of Goblin Slayer, and you can pretty much figure out what's going on
Mm-hmm.
for those of us who have seen it. So
For those
yeah,
of us who haven't seen, yes, right
well,
now, yeah. For those of us who have seen Goblin Slayer, just picture that first episode,
yeah,
and
and
you've got it.
that's basically what's going on. Is especially when it's a large horde and there are a lot of losers, shall we say?
Mm-hmm.
So yes, and then
Yeah.
um,
So what ends
yeah,
up
and
happening in
we managed to defeat a large portion of the goblins and the goblin captain or whatever it is, the commander for the group
it was
takes
not a
a
captain per se, but it was one of the few that had survived.
yeah, and well, yeah, which and I know that Roland had gone through and in beast form was attacking one. I know that Joro actually had gone down, and Lark was with us at this point, if you
Mm-hmm.
recall.
He was.
And Lark went in, cast fog, and dragged dragged the cleric out of there.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, because Roland is in B shape, he couldn't do any healing to bring him up. So yeah, but then and then of course Tiberius was working his way around the the area, just slaughtering goblins left and right.
Mm-hmm.
And then yeah, I think there was maybe what 2 or 3 left, or was he
There
the only one
were
left?
there were I believe, if I remember correctly, there were 3 in total that had ultimately survived. 2 of them were close enough to the exit already where they just turned and ran. But one of them was just far enough away where couldn't get there in one turn. So picks up a woman and holds a knife to her neck,
Mm-hmm.
basically using her as a meat shield. And Tiberius, not believing that the goblin would go through with it, decides to make an attack roll and misses.
Yep.
And because he missed the target, I explained how the goblin, seeing what was coming in, turns in such a way where the woman was in the direct line of path, and this
Yep.
giant slayer axe cleaves through the dwarven woman, splitting her open and giving the goblin the opportunity to let go and run.
Mm-hmm.
Now, on a technical level, beast shape or just dashing would have been able to catch the one, but there was another horde of goblins that probably would have seen that and continued the fight from there
Yeah,
had you pursued.
and yeah, but and also at that point, um, Roland was a little more concerned with, well, yeah, because after Tiberius accidentally slays this dwarven woman, the goblin tosses him on Roland and then takes off, tosses
That's
her
Yep,
corpse on Roland and then takes off,
that is correct
and
because you two were the only ones that were close enough to really provide him a threat.
Mm-hmm.
So he tosses her onto you to prevent you from attacking him, and then bolts
Yep,
because
and Roland was a little more concerned with keeping the woman alive if he could, which he could not, unfortunately.
I forget why not. Was it
Well,
was it
because
was it
it that
literally
wasn't
just was it
it was
literally
that
just
wasn't
because we didn't know how to bring a woman back from the dead, or was it because you didn't have
no
any healing
she
magic
was an
left?
insta kill. That was an insta kill because I think
Mm,
she was at like 2 HP and he did like 15 damage.
yeah, it might have
So
been. Yeah,
yeah, that was an insta kill, and none of us had any kind of resurrection magic at that point.
that's true. That's correct. Now I remember.
Yeah.
Yeah, that
So
was a lot of
I
damage.
mean, there was a part of Roland that um, really did want to go after the goblin, but yeah, no, someone dying in his arms kind of distracted him.
But
Minor
so
details,
yeah,
right?
the big things that Tiberius was a part of were the animated armors in session 1, the zombies in session 2, and the doppelganger.
And
And
the goblin and the gargoyles.
yep, the gargoyles, the Duragar underneath the graveyard,
Mm-hmm.
and the cathedral that was underground, and the Drider incident.
Yes,
The
yes.
Tiberius was the very first choice for the pendant, which at
Mm-hmm.
the time, because of my relative noobishness and unclear exactly where to go, I had used a placeholder name, Talisman of Ultimate Evil. That was the name placeholder for what the pendant was ultimately going to be. But I had decided that if he had asked anyone who could identify it, would identify it as this Talisman of Ultimate Evil, which kills you if you're not evil aligned. Tiberius is not evil aligned,
Oh, he's chaotic. He's
and
not
he's
evil.
alive.
Uh huh.
That was ultimately going to be the very first mystery regarding the pendants before they were ultimately uh, secondhand retconned, because nothing really came of the pendants anyway. Up
Well, not
until
yet, at least.
like in the time between that point and when you got your pendant, Tiberius had left, and there really wasn't anything to keep the pendants in any form of relevancy.
Mm-hmm.
So the original idea was, of course, to have these things be the pendants of ultimate evil, and those who were chosen by them were unaffected for a mysterious reason. And
Roland still has his pendant. It's
he
still
does.
something that he keeps
Mm-hmm.
to remind him of his ultimate duty
And it's
and ultimate course.
it is quite amazing how often you forget about that. But that may or may not be hinting at something a bit too strongly.
Hmm. Well, good thing your mic cut out then.
Oh, so you didn't hear me when I said it's amazing how often you forget about that pendant.
Oh no, I don't. No, he's the thing is though, he's already. You can only have a maximum of. He already has his 3 item attunements.
Hmm.
So if you recall correctly, there was that one session that we were trying to figure out what was going on. Um, well, it was when the cleric in Sturmwind was still um, possessed,
That is correct.
and Roland did go into one of the park areas and meditated with the amulet to see if he could
Mm-hmm.
uh, tap into the wisdom of the previous owner to see if they could figure out what was going on.
I remember. I remember.
Yeah. So.
So ultimately, Tiberius's ability to speak abyssal saved you guys from the
Oh yes.
Drider,
Mm-hmm.
and
Of course, I don't know why it didn't occur to us at the time to try Elven because I spoke Elven. Uh, so did
so did Tiberius.
so did Tiberius, and yet hey, we're gonna try common, and then I'm gonna try orc, and that doesn't work either. Why don't you try elven? Because these are, oh yeah. So,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the Drider gives this pendant of ultimate evil to Tiberius and labels him master. Now,
mm-hmm.
the original idea for that was going to be that this pendant was connected to the figure that ran away. Like, if you remember correctly, the doppelganger had help, and there was this figure that ran off, and there was that piece of torn leather or torn fabric.
Mm-hmm.
The pendant was originally going to be a part of this cult that the mysterious figure was a part of. Ultimately, due to nothing actually coming from the pendant for so long, that ultimately got changed. But the figure still holds some significance, though not nearly as prominent right now. And and of course, the pendant's ultimate meaning was shifted. But the Drider had a loyalty to whomever owned the pendant, and Tiberius was quite perplexed, shall we say, about why the fuck this was happening.
Yeah, slightly confused.
Yep, and so yeah.
But on the other hand, though, thankfully he decided, you know what, we'll just roll with this.
Mm-hmm.
You want to worship me as a god? That's fine. At least you're not killing us.
Mm-hmm.
Because wasn't my gosh, aren't Dreaders like CR7 or something like that, and we were
It's
all level
something like
2?
that. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
something
there were
like that.
three of us, and we were all level 2,
Mm-hmm.
and we're caught up against this Dread, and we're just like, well, shit, son. So yeah, but yeah, that was kind of. Plus, we still had to get back into town to warn them of the impending goblin attack, as I recall correctly.
Which you did,
But yeah,
and they
hmm and they said,
confronted
well, what's the
it.
big? Yeah, right.
So, so moving
Yeah,
on
and it was
to
a,
the
it was a massive horde of like what, a half a dozen goblins.
off screen, it was more than them. It was more than
uh,
that, but
uh,
so moving on to the events because we're technically covering two from two different worlds. Technically,
hmm
we know how he kind of treated de Grisniak with a sense of I don't care.
Yeah,
But what do you
like
think?
everything.
Right? Do you think he would care about Zavanna Vale, the orphaned, not orphaned, the fatherless child of the leader of Sturmwind?
Hmm. I think he would have had. I think the character himself would have had fun with her.
Mm-hmm.
Whether or not the player would have ran it like that is a whole other matter. But I think that yeah, he probably would have enjoyed um, killing with Savannah.
Mm-hmm.
They both have that sense of mischief. His sense of mischief is a little less innocent than Savannah's.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, no, I think they would have gotten along. I think probably I bet what would have happened is that he would have come up and smashed something in front of Shavana, and she'd be like, "Oh, that is so cool! How do you do that?" Yeah.
Maybe. That's entirely
So
possible.
I mean, and I think honestly, if I do wish that he had stayed with the campaign a little bit longer, because having two barbarians in the group would have made things go well. We would have chewed through bad guys a heck of a lot faster. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I
And
mean, not
a
to not
point
to
of
denigrate
reference.
druids or anything like that, but they're not exactly massive damage dealers.
So a frame of reference that I have neglected to mention for the sake of the actual videos themselves, Zavanna Vale, as well as her mother, Valcoria, are both blue dragonborns. Now, Valcoria rules this city kingdom, so to speak. Think Rohan in terms of like size, but maybe a little larger. Uh, it is a city place, country, whatever, of mostly dragonborn and some tieflings.
Yeah. Well,
Now, and for
as
the
I understand it,
and this is just for the sake of those watching who have no idea what our campaign is. The the deciding uh, detail for who Zavanna is the fact that she has human eyes, as opposed to like more dragon, you know, more dragon iris. She has very distinct human like eyes, and her whole quest in regards to the actual players is helping her find out who that father is, because for whatever reason, Valcoria doesn't want her to know. Now, eventually, due to the meddling kids known as Roland, who is actually quite old,
he made it quite really. He's 33. That's not quite old. Plus, he's a half elf, so they routinely live to like
200 something
150,
years.
200
Yeah.
years old. Yeah. So,
Eventually, she confronted Roland, saying, "Hey, if you drop this and never mention to her anything, I will curb your curiosity and just tell you." So she told him a few things, and that was that.
mm-hmm.
But later on, mostly because she didn't actually learn anything, and partially because of the lure of adventure, Zavanna Vale decided to travel with the mercenary group of the Silver Bear Guild and Orion.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Much to her
and
mother's
yeah,
dismay when she found out.
oh, she was furious, as I'm sure any mother would be.
Uh-huh.
I think that I honestly think Tiberius would hate Valcoria. I think he would find her stuck up. I think that he would find her uh, boastful. I don't think he'd really be afraid of her. Not because she's not powerful, but because he doesn't actually believe that she would attack him.
Yeah. Well, or he's not exactly the he's not the brightest bulb in the box. I think he actually had, which is kind of ironic because I mean he actually had a decent intelligence score. You know.
I think it was more to the fact that he doesn't care to analyze the situation before
Yeah.
charging in. I think that
Uh
was
huh.
just more his character.
That and he just he just doesn't care.
Which, in all fairness, was still very much a part of who his character was in backstory, because, like we established earlier, growing up in a family that large, if you don't take the initiative, you're not going to be heard.
Mm-hmm.
Which makes sense. It just doesn't really work too well if you're talking about the head of state,
Yeah.
who may
Minor
or may not
details,
have,
right.
who may or may not have just lost her daughter, not to death, but to some traveling fucking mercenary.
Mm-hmm.
And keep in mind, this daughter, chronologically speaking, she's 4.
Yeah.
Now, Dragonborn age significantly faster than humans, so she would be like the mental age of, I think, 12, something like that.
Yeah. You said something like 10 or 11.
Yeah, 10
Yeah.
or 12, something along those lines. So it's not like she's dumb or anything like that. She's just ignorant of the world, despite the, despite the obvious teachings that she would be learning from her mother and from the maids and the handmaidens and all that stuff. The various teachers that she'd be, having.
Mm-hmm.
So when it comes to those two, I think Tiberius would love the little shit and despise the old hag.
Yeah, probably.
I do think, however, that he would take
I do
full
think.
advantage of the culture that Sturmwind propagates. The whole, yeah, anyone can pick a fight with anyone at any time. Loser buys drinks.
Yeah.
I think he would
I
put
could
full
honestly see him.
advantage of that. I think he would take full advantage of that and just get into fist fights. I think he would.
And
Totally do that.
I could also easily see him taking on. Well, not take. I could see him um, having a lot of some fun conversations with the Drider barmaid
Mm-hmm.
in Abyssal.
I honestly don't know how I would have gone with that, if I'm being
See, he
totally
would
honest,
have,
because
because we would have arrived there, and he would have seen, oh, look at this, another Drider, and then he was, I'm going to switch to Abyssal and just start chatting, like, hey, how's it going?
I try to avoid the animu styles when it comes to most characters, but the Drider barmaid in question, like specifically, I feel like I would have, you know, made her the very Hinata Hyuga esque character where she does her job and she does her job well, but when confronted with certain characters and certain languages and stuff like that, she would just shrink.
Mm.
I
Oh,
like I don't know if that's how I would have gone
I
with
guess
it ultimately,
that would have,
but
yeah. I
but
was gonna say that doesn't really work with that particular, kind of a character because, um, I mean, she might have been a little bit shy, but I don't think she would have.
well, like I said, with like specific characters and specific dialects, specifically,
Mm,
because like depending on where you look, if I remember correctly, Driders have one of two like mental capacities, like some kind of a defiant pride, as in the fucking Spider Queen, fucking Tiamat, no, not Tiamat, fucking Lolth.
yep.
Lolth
Well, she's a
disowned me because I am not
yeah.
worthy. I'm gonna prove to her I am worthy, even in this monstrous form. You know, the defiant pride. And then there's the, oh fuck, I've been cursed to live out my days as a monster by my god. I am unworthy of this life. You know,
Mm,
and you'd have that in the back of your head for all sorts of encounters. So if
mhm,
there's someone out there who, you know, like speaks this ancient language that, you know, not many people know or not people understand, or most certainly not many people on the surface, and then of course, you know, he's got this pendant that should be killing him, but it's not. Could be trudging up those old memories or those old encounters.
mhm,
Like a feeling of unworthiness rather than like inherent shyness.
mhm. Okay.
But yeah, I honestly think that Tiberius would have the most fun once you got to Sturmwind. I think he would enjoy it.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll probably give him the option of fighting in like some kind of a gladiatorial arena. I'm sure he would have probably
Well,
taken up that option. I
well,
mean,
if
I
you
know
wanted
you
the
used it.
gladiatorial arena, you'd have to wait until the Hunters Hall for that, because Sturmwind doesn't have that. The streets would be your equivalent to an arena. You know, absolutely no killing, but you can feel free to fucking fight as long as you want. But I think I think he would have had a good time in Sturmwind.
Oh yeah,
I honestly don't know how he would respond to Snake, the Dragonborn bookworm. I don't know how he would have responded to him.
I don't think he would have. He'd be like, ah, nerd, whatever.
That's also true. I think he would have tried to flirt with Titania. I think he would have tried that.
Yeah,
Here's this white scale dragonborn, a guard.
yeah. Oh, and she's strong. Hmm.
Let's see. Is she the loud type? Not really, but kind of. Interesting.
See, now I'm just imagining him like walking up to her and say, "Hey, baby, you want to find out how the Dragonborn comes?"
Oh boy.
Yes, D&D pickup lines cross with Skyrim.
I've had my own pickup lines inspired from Avatar.
Water
Like,
tribe.
hey baby, are you an earthbender? Because you're making it hard to stand.
You must be an Earthbender. You're rocking my world, baby. Are you an Airbender? Because you just took my breath away.
Yeah, of course.
Well, of course, what? Hanging out in Uncle Iroh's tea shop makes sense.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think that if we're talking about like overall locations, I think he would find Sturmwind the best. I don't know if he would like going to the Bigfoot Mill though, because for context purposes, the Bigfoot Mill and the location where those goblins killed raped and killed the dwarves, they're connected, like
Yeah.
literally connected in context of like a business venture
Okay.
where like the Bigfoot Mill does its own thing and it provides all the stuff that a mill would, and they do trade businesses with the dwarves in the mine, and they're connected directly. And of course, that's where the goblins got in and where they supposedly got out. So
Mm.
I'm not sure how he would respond to that. I don't think he would like it, and I don't think he would like as a character or as a player. I don't think he would like going back and seeing this, this the death and destruction brought on by these goblins.
That we didn't finish off. Yeah.
And I feel like
And Roland had a little bit of that in the back of his mind as well. I mean, he knew that these were from the goblins from the same tribe, but he didn't have any conclusive proof that if he would have if they would have finished off those goblins, that they would not have still come and slaughtered all the dwarves and gnomes.
hmm
So he doesn't. I mean, he knows that events are connected, but he doesn't know if that would necessarily have prevented it from happening by killing by managing to kill all the all the goblins.
hmm
So, and I'm sure it would have been a painful reminder for Tiberius. That's for sure.
that being said, the end result when you were on your way back with the tiefling woman in custody and the fight that ensued, I think he'd have a blast there. I honestly think that if those two barbarians, again, a little bit of backstory, the tiefling woman was responsible for stealing the fundings from various guild members of the Silver Bear Guild, and it would have made more sense had Tiberius been there, because he would have been all like, "Oh, they stole from us? Fuck them. We're going after them." Now, you guys were able to kill the Dragonborns that were responsible for it, but the Tiefling managed to get away. And you found her back in the mines and taking her prisoner so that she could lead you to where the gold is. She did an Arcana check, found out what type of weapon Kalu, our barbarian, was wielding, the Sword of
Did she
Vengeance.
nat 20 on that, by the way?
She did not. It was like an 18.
Oh, okay. So pretty damn close.
It was a pretty damn close, but it was high enough with her intelligence. Oh, sorry, her wisdom was like, yeah, she would know what this is, especially given her background. So she deals damage to Kalu, and he fails his wisdom saving throw because she knows that if she does this for the heroes, she's gonna die anyway. She's gonna go down in her own way. So, yeah. So that starts an hour and a half real time confrontation where the barbarian is trying to kill the prisoner that they need taken alive.
And we're trying to prevent him from killing her. And it's not just that, but we're on a bridge.
Mm-hmm.
We're on a bridge over this like 120-foot drop chasm in the middle of this mountain, right? So basically, all that Kalu has to do is hold her over the edge and just drop her, and that would be end of story. But no, he decides to frickin' ragdoll her over one side of the bridge, and then bam on the other onto the floor of the bridge.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so yeah,
which was ultimately what I thought he was going to do. I thought he was just going to fling her off the edge and be done with it, but no.
Mm-hmm. No, apparently he wanted to savor it.
Mm-hmm. Which is in line with his character, but still.
Yes, it is, and considering the final outcome of the actual encounter, I honestly have no problem with it because, yeah, I mean, if he would have just dropped her, that would have been what fuck all that we could have done about it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, none of us had feather fall.
Yep. But ultimately, I think that he would have had the time of his life had the two barbarians gone head to head.
Well,
because
but
they both would have had
there is
rage.
one encounter. There's one encounter that you're completely forgetting about. That I think that he would have had another chance, and that was the fight in the bar.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the actual bar fight. You know, the one where they were insulting Shyvana,
Mm-hmm.
and I know it happened that that Kalu took on that one.
Mm-hmm.
Was
Berserker.
he? Was he? Yeah, he was a berserker barbarian, and those two were going at, and the three of us basically took out took out the other three or marauders, if you
Yep.
will. Um, but yeah, if Tiberius would have been with us in that instance, he you know what he probably would have. I would say he would have done one of two things. He would have joined Kalu and try and take this guy down. Of course, which we might have had a much different outcome than we did, or he would have.
I think he would have gone for
He,
the captain, if I'm being totally honest. Because it
probably.
going on the assumption that he would have loved this little shit, the berserker never actually said anything insulting about her. It was the commander guy. So
Mm-hmm.
I think he would have tunnel visioned straight on him and just smacked him square in the face until that face is no longer recognizable.
Yeah.
Because the berserker ultimately was the type of guy who believed in a fair fight.
Mm-hmm.
Just despite his nature was very like, no, not a fair fight.
Yeah.
I will not partake.
Well, and he was having a lot of fun with Kalu, that's for sure.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And I have to admit, if there was any NPC that we could have like dragged with us during the undead invasion
Mm-hmm.
of Stormwind, I wish it was him. I wish we could have found him because I mean if we could have if if he would have joined us, we would have had some really good fights. On the same side rather than opposing each other. I'm pretty sure that he would have been a real big hand later on, down the line. He probably would have still been with us.
He probably could have helped a little bit, but like purely based on the nature of where his stats came from, it wouldn't have been that much use to you.
Mm.
Because he was going to be a static NPC ultimately.
Okay.
And,
Well, helping with helping with tanking would have been made some fights a lot easier.
well, of course. But I do agree that would have been a very interesting exchange between Tiberius and the marauders who insulted the kid.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, let's see. So moving on, do you think he would have actually enjoyed Schreiertown at all?
He would have been bored as hell.
Like his whole family is this loud collective of things, and here we have this village of happy-go-lucky halflings almost singing their speaks, like, ugh.
Okay, I bet he would have tried to one up Kalu on at least one statistic.
Oh, you think he would have tried to fuck
Oh
more
yeah.
halflings?
Oh yes. Because he's like, well, I can't fight anyone, so you know what? I'm just gonna make a point and try and seduce a couple of these halfling chicks. They're kind of cute. There's a lot of fun stuff that you can do.
But I honestly don't think I remember him being all that flirtatious, even when there was opportunity for it.
We didn't have a whole lot of opportunity, and I think
Trying to stick his dick in things a lot smaller than him.
We're talking about Tiberius, not Kalu.
Oh, okay.
and apparently Kalu doesn't have that issue. He just kind of plows right on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And we'll get into that particular storyline a little bit later.
Which storyline?
Oh, between Kalu and the cleric,
Mm-hmm.
the gnome cleric.
Indeed.
Yes, when I assume the next time that he joins us in one of these sessions.
Yep.
So,
but yeah, so
yeah, I think he would have been bored as heck in Schreiertown until he discovered that, hey, you know what? There's some pretty cute gnome and halfling women around here. So,
perhaps, Yes, perhaps. I I tend to agree with you in that instance. I feel like he would have been bored as hell. I feel like he would have spent most of the time just sitting down, sharpening or polishing his axe or something like that. Uh, Technically speaking, the entire reason why he was able to keep the axe was because the mother of the one of the other players gifted it to him, and the reason why he was allowed to keep it was under a promise that he would go look for her son who had gone missing.
Which
And
never happened.
it never happened, but quite frankly, it didn't need to happen when pretty much everyone in fucking Volved fucking
Left.
vanished.
Yeah.
They all vanished. Like, you're the only player that was technically around during that point,
Hmm.
and you've got your mind on other things, shall we say?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's, for one reason or another, just vanished into the void.
Well,
And,
we could still run into him later on, which would be an interesting, a rather interesting uh, situation, just to see,
mhm.
So I mean, I'm sure that Roland would probably recognize him, but I don't think anyone else would. I don't think. I don't even think that Kalu met Slim Alabaster.
He did not. Hmm. I was reminded that I haven't eaten anything all day.
Oh, so
And
might as
then,
well.
and
Might as
then
well take a
there's
couple
this thing.
bites,
There's this thing right over here that smells of pizza,
huh?
and my stomach is growling. I held off for a good 45 minutes, and I broke. I took my bite. I'm good. Yeah, Omen is giving me the fucking... The cat's over there. I'm over here. You were looking dead at me, motherfucker.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I mean, you could be a cat.
I was-
You both shed. I don't know which one's worse.
when you have his hair as
You know,
long as
I told-
mine, you tend to lose, like, strand here and there.
Well, I've discovered that you actually lose hair at the same rate as people with shorter hair. It's just that it's so much more
Noticeable?
noticeable and prominent when it's sitting there on the floor on the couch or somewhere on it. So actually, looking in the at the sneak attack or the conditions to have a sneak attack, I would think that he definitely would have taken that Tiberius would have definitely taken at least a couple of a couple of levels in Rogue because so the rules for sneak attack are once per turn you can deal an extra 1d6 damage to one creature you hit with an attack if you have advantage on the attack roll. So as long as you're rolling with advantage, you get a sneak attack. It doesn't matter if you're not seen or not.
Oh,
attack
yeah.
must-
Like, that was
Okay,
one of
oh,
the things
here.
when, like,
The
I
attack
was
must use a
playing-
finesse or a ranged weapon, by the
Mm.
way. So you
oh,
can't
or
just
a
okay.
ranged weapon.
Yes.
Ah, interesting.
And then it says here, excuse me, you don't need advantage on the attack roll if another enemy of the target is within 5 feet of it. That enemy isn't incapacitated, and you don't have a disadvantage on the attack roll. So
Mm-hmm.
basically, if as long as they're busy fighting someone else, you can take pot shots at them. But yeah, no, I don't think because it has to be a finesse or ranged weapon. Yeah, on second thought, he probably wouldn't have done that.
I wasn't thinking that he would take it anyway just because of his personality.
Yeah,
Like, he does not sneak around.
no.
Like, imagine this. Like, oh, you're sneaking through a lord's estate. Roll stealth check, not be noticed. You guys would probably try your hand at stealth. Tiberius would just walk down the hall like he owns the place. Which,
Yeah, but
ironically enough,
the
might
thing is,
have
sometimes
worked.
it works. Yeah,
Yeah.
sometimes it does work. Yes.
Like, oh, there's a beholder over there. Roll stealth. Everyone roll stealth. Tiberius walks down the hall.
Right.
The beholder is curious.
Beholder, come
and
at me,
does not
bitch.
the type. The beholder is curious and contemplates life. Does not know how to process this.
Right.
But so yeah, what do you? I think Tiberius would enjoy the Hunter's Hall, and I honestly think that if not for the idea that might want to go into the Dragon's Forest for like plot reasons, I feel like Tiberius might have actually picked up a couple of those posters for hunting targets. I feel like he would have had some kind of stake in proving himself. I feel like he would have. I feel like he would have enjoyed the idea of taking the bones of his slain enemies and morphing them into armor. Like in the DMG, the giant slayer has these little teeth that are kind of like pinned like earrings on the backside of the axe. So I feel like he would have done something very similar to that, as he went on, and especially with the Hunter's Hall.
Kind of like how Roland will take something from it.
Kind of exactly like that. I feel like eventually he would have taken that up and went, yeah, I'm going to take the stuff from the Flind or these other, or these gnolls or these bat or the undead, and I'll start decorating my axe so that it shows where I've been. Which I like that quite a lot. If I ever have the ability to be a player character, I might just do that.
Well, and he took Totem Warrior for his barbarian path, right?
I think so,
as I recall correctly. So I mean, I wonder if you could have woven that into his character somehow, because I mean, when you take the path of the Totem Warrior, you have to take part of that particular animal that you are you're taking the totem of, and having some kind of a body part on your person, like the fang of a wolf or the claw of a bear or something like that for a bear totem. Which, by the way, a bear totem barbarian is an absolute tank.
I can imagine.
Oh, it's straight up scary. I mean, you as a DM would have.
Was it at a later level in barbarians in general, or was it one of the totems that basically gave you resistance to magical?
That's bear totem. That's bear totem, and I honestly, it gave you resistance to every single damage type with the exception of psychic.
Right.
So, fire, poison, lightning, acid,
necrotic.
Necrotic. Yep. You just like power through it.
Fuck.
Yeah.
That would have been.
Oh. Could you imagine that was Giorno? Oh my gosh. No, I mean, like, yeah. If Giorno and Tiberius stayed with us, you would have had to add at least three more of everything in the in every encounter.
That would. I have problems enough. I have trouble enough trying to make this thing fair for you guys.
Because you got Elvin, who takes like 2 hits and he's down. You've got Roland, who takes like 3 hits and he's down, and then we have Kalu, who's basically plays the punching bag.
And now Omen also has damage reduction, plus his own healing abilities. And then
a totem, a bear totem barbarian, and a freaking forge cleric with an AC of 21.
Which we will not be doing an episode on Giorno because he already has a figure for Giorno that is fully painted. But we will be going over his player in the next week while we're designing Faceless.
Mm-hmm.
So
have you already designed Faceless? Okay, you need to give him some.
Not yet.
You need to give him
Faceless and Breach have yet to be designed because it's been so long that I've actually looked at them that I've forgotten more or less how they behaved.
Mm-hmm.
So Faceless is easy to remember, and if I'm being totally honest, he's going to be very bland.
Really?
Bland,
I
bland
suppose
in the sense that he understands that if you want to go unseen,
you gotta blend
dress
in.
like everyone else.
See, I have to be honest. I always imagined him with like a pea coat or some kind of a captain's coat, just because he took the pirate subclass.
Wait, pirate subclass?
Well,
Swashbuckler, you
they
mean?
Swashbuckler, yeah, which basically means pirate for all intents and purposes. I mean, he didn't have a blunderbuss or anything like that, or a what do you call those single shot muzzle loaded pistols? Are they just pistol?
Um, I'm
So
pretty
he
sure
didn't
it's
have
just
anything.
pistol.
Yeah, he didn't have anything like that. He had a decent sword.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, he really wanted to play up the sneak, the sneak aspect of things.
Which he did for the most part.
Yeah. Oh, he did a very good job of it.
And I feel like had we continued on with that, it would have been quite enjoyable. But we'll talk about him next week.
Yes.
For this
Yes.
time,
Right now.
we're talking about Tiberius. We're almost done with him, actually.
Hmm.
Because I genuinely feel like he would enjoy the Hunter's Hall. I do think he would enjoy Sturmwind for the most part. I think he would hate Schreier Town. I do not believe he would feel comfortable in the Dwarven Mines anymore. I feel
Yeah.
like he would
Probably
have
not.
I feel like he would have a personal grudge against Gorn's hand. I feel like he would have like just despised them for not necessarily what they did to him, but for how they just completely and utterly manipulated his method of combat to get away.
Yeah.
My cat's on crack, apparently.
Well, quit giving him catnip.
I haven't been. That's the frightening part. He actually seems to get calm.
Do we discuss how he would have? Do we discuss how he would have reacted to Degrizniak yet?
Not yet, because well, number one, he was around when Degrizniak was first introduced,
Yes.
and we're getting to individual characters next. Like we talk about location first.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I don't think he would have really found the temples unimposing.
All that interesting.
I actually feel like Tiberius would be very interested in these temples, especially considering that the very pendant he has is the same symbol that you see in the temples themselves.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like he would have taken an express interest in them, and I feel like he would have been very interested to learn as much as he could. Mm-hmm. Actually, using the opportunity to interact with the spell slingers and those who have a higher knowledge and wisdom for this, I think. Mm-hmm. Maybe cutting a few deals here and there to be like, hey, I will do this for you if you help me figure out what the fuck this is.
Well, and he does apparently have a taste for esoteric knowledge. Mm-hmm. I mean, after going into Nasruddin's
study
and picking up a book on flipping demonology, apparently. So yeah, that would make a lot of sense that he would seek out some additional knowledge for that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and actually, now that I'm thinking about it, now that you mention it, I feel like he actually would like Snake, because he's a bookworm with all of the knowledge that he would have sought after.
That's a good point.
Yeah. I think as soon as he got past the nerdy exterior, I think he and Snake actually might have made a pretty good conversationalist.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. The more and more we talk about this, and the more and more we talk about who Tiberius was, the more and more I realize that Tiberius would have fit right at fucking home in Sturmwind.
Yeah, that would have been his type of his type of town, as long as he could get over the fact of people being suspicious of pig skins.
Yes, that is something that is in an
Yes,
undertone throughout Stormwind is that they historically Dragonborn and Tiefling did not live there. Stormwind was conquered during the Leviathan War, and
as part of the peace
for
agreement, was
one
ceded to the leftovers of the invading army.
for one reason or another, they were allowed to keep the place, despite the fact that in recent developments of the campaign, it is uncovered that that so-called peace treaty may or may not have been written under false pretenses.
Details, details. You know.
So yeah, but regardless of whether or not the actual populace know that, they are very much aware of how they are viewed outside of that city. So they also have some kind of subconscious or no, they also have some kind of distrust for those who are not scaled skins or like demon descendants. So more flesh-like skins, human, elves, and dwarves, stuff like that. They have a particular distrust for, but they're willing to do business with because of their gun ho, gunslinger attitude towards things. They're willing to give you. They're willing to welcome you at arm's length, but not much farther than that.
Yeah, they'll put up with it
And especially,
mostly.
though, I will say that if Tiberius behaves the way we think he would have been the most welcome out of the party.
I think so. Yeah.
Like seeing someone embrace their own culture goes a long way in establishing relations. I think
Hmm.
anyone who's a negotiator can attest to that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep. And I feel like Hunter's Hall would have been something of a. I feel like he would have liked what they stood for, even more so if the player played Monster Hunter, though I don't know if he did or not, so I can't really say one way or the other.
Well, I think the character himself can definitely get along. Uh, can definitely understand and be impressed by people um, that give honor to skill
Oh,
and
absolutely.
and strength.
Hmm.
So uh, so yeah, giving honor to skill and strength would be because they would value those things being a guild of hunters.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, they would definitely definitely have he would definitely have responded to that in a positive fashion.
And normally we'd keep on this for a little bit longer, but we do want to get to the Almighty at some point, so we'll skip over to the individual characters, and we'll go with a handful. I think I'm going to limit it to like 6 or 8. So the
Okay.
first one, uh, more of a development than a meeting. How do you think Tiberius would have responded to learning about why de Grisniak despises Goran's hand? What with them essentially being responsible for the kidnapping of his daughter, and knowing how the Goran's hand treat women, you can come up with a couple of examples
Scenarios.
and scenarios of how they might be treating her
Mm-hmm.
for the past 3 years.
Uh huh. Yeah, that stuff can take a lot of counseling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And for the for context purposes, de Grisniak is a goblin of, I believe, I can't remember if I said him at 50 years old or not, but he's old enough to have gray hair now.
Mhm.
And he's
Well,
definitely old enough.
goblins don't live much beyond 60 anyway,
Yes,
if
he
anything.
is
So
definitely up there. He's definitely very old. He's old enough to the point where he should have grandchildren at this point. But to the best of your knowledge, he only has the one daughter, and he has been trying to find her for the past 3 years.
and I believe his wife, I think, was killed.
You never actually asked
It's-
about his wife.
You're right. Yeah, so I think that there was an assumption there, but yeah.
Hmm.
So yeah, we'll have to clarify that at some point in time. We've got so many characters' backstories that we need to keep track of. So
There are, and for the most part, they're all superficial, or not superficial, unnecessary for the main plot. It's literally just like background information that you may or may not want to look at, depending on how much talking you want to do, as opposed to rolling.
Mhm.
But I feel like Tiberius would have had. I feel like he would have been a bit cold to the situation, though. I do feel like he wouldn't have been rude about the concept of a
Well,
father trying to find his daughter. Like, despite the fact that
well,
he
but
doesn't
the thing
really.
is, though, that he has sisters,
Hmm.
so you're right. I think his response would have been black or white. He would
Well, I
have.
mean, like at first, I feel like it would have
Hmm.
been like that frozen exterior that would take time, but I feel like he would have eventually thawed out to de Grisniak's situation. I feel like he would have expressed more and more sympathy
Mhm.
and more
Well, and I
concern.
don't think he had any particular thing against goblins anyway. So
Hmm.
so yeah, he didn't have that. Really feathers. He didn't
I thought about it
necessarily.
at first. I thought
Yeah,
about it.
I mean, it does kind of make sense, but then yeah, I'm kind of glad that you decided to not go with that.
I mean, honestly, this is a part that I would like to talk about Hero Forge at some point in time. The the hats and the headpieces are so hit or miss. They're
Yeah, well,
so hit or miss that it's just
because so many of them
so
are
weird.
I
Some
mean
of
they
so many of them are so situational.
yeah.
Like
Like
pretty much,
how many times are you gonna put how many times are you gonna put a meat cleaver in someone's head? You know what I'm saying?
granted,
It
you
was
will,
funny
yeah.
in the Hobbit, but uh, but outside of that, really,
Hmm. And obviously, like when it comes to an attire, especially when it comes to like a player character's attire, for the most part, the legs and the feet, the torso and the hands, you can mix and match those pretty damn well. But when it comes to the headpiece, for whatever reason, you need the body to complement the headpiece because otherwise
yeah.
it just does not work. I mean, you'll notice this in a lot of the designs I make. I hope that I rarely actually use headpieces all that much because
Well,
they
let's
require
be
the
honest.
setting.
Yeah, but let's be honest here. Um, how many people do you see walking around with hats on? I mean,
Yeah.
okay, you might see what 10% of people walking down the street wearing a hat.
Hmm.
Like 150 years ago, seeing everyone
Yeah.
walking around with a hat on was very common. These days, you don't see it that much
Hmm.
because it's not part of formal attire anymore. Um, and generally speaking, if you are wearing headgear or if you're wearing a hat, usually it's like a baseball cap, and if you are wearing a baseball cap, it's either you're
It's a
trying to show
sports
some.
team or a
Yeah, it's
political
a sport,
candidate or something like that.
well, it's mainly a sports team these days,
Hmm.
um, and um, and but if it's not for a sports team, then it's usually like a bald spot that you're trying to cover up.
Hmm.
Which honestly, um, or or in the case of if you are like a delivery driver and a hat is part of your uniform.
Yeah.
So well, at least that's how things are up here in Minnesota. Like I suppose
Hmm.
down south you might see a lot more cowboy hats and stuff like that. But
As a matter of fact,
um,
you do not.
well, there you go then.
Well,
Uh,
at least not in Louisiana.
well, yeah, the cowboy persona is not all that big in Louisiana anyway. But
But no, I get what you're saying,
yeah,
and going back to the Hero Forge thing, like so many characters just for whatever reason, like the
well,
costumes that they go with,
I
like
did
don't
see
really work.
I did see the Assassin's Creed hood. And I suppose if you had that along with the appropriate shirt, that would be a very good um,
Orion has a hood.
assemble. Yeah, but that would be a very good assembly for like a rogue type of character.
Hmm.
Well, but he's smart.
Lark
So.
has a hood. Orion has a hood. Omen has a hood. Um, Rawl has a helmet, but he's a knight. He's clad head to toe.
Yeah,
Um, Avalok has a hood.
and also
Um,
a nose of epic proportions.
he does. That is his. Well, it's not necessarily his nose. That's his his eyes
Yeah.
are here. That's his jaw. His jaw and like nose and mouth.
Mm-hmm.
Now I actually showed those
Like
photos.
what? Did he?
I showed
Was
photos.
that a polymorph gone wrong or what?
No,
Okay.
that was a wish spell gone right.
Oh. Oh.
He was born with a deformity that basically was just a lesser extent version of what you see on Avalok, where his jaw was just that far forward and his mouth was trying to compensate for it. And his family, his parents, were saving up gold to buy a wish spell so that the wizard could cast a wish spell and fix his face.
Mm-hmm.
Avalok, even at a young age, found out that he could use this deformity to his advantage because people would expect a specific they would be expecting something very specific from him. So he would use that and he would manipulate that to get what he needed. So eventually, when the time came to ask the wizard for a wish spell, he just said, "Make this more like a beak."
Oh, okay.
He full on embraced his deformity and used that to become one of the unique members in a very powerful council. So Avalok is wicked smart, and he has fully embraced his deformity as just like, yeah, what you gonna do about it, punk?
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
But yeah,
So it's kind of like that guy with the massive mole on his face that people kind of keep staring at, and he uses their distraction to like talk him into stuff.
sure,
Okay.
but like the fleshy beak.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so and then Bloodloon Drowning also has a headpiece, but it's just a fucking skull. It's a fucking beast skull.
Which makes sense in this particular neighborhood.
I'm honestly trying to think of how many others. There is one character that has a crown. There are a couple of others that may or may not have like headbands or something, but as far as everything else is concerned, like I just don't use headpieces.
Yeah.
Degrisniak has a hat, but he's a merchant, so
Right. Right. Well,
and it also doubles as his hat of disguise. So back to Tiberius. What do you think? Do you think he would have gotten along with Orion, the human mercenary?
I know
from the
who
Heroes
Ryan
Guild?
is. Yeah. In Stormwind.
Yep.
Tiberius kind of struck me as a black and white kind of character. You know, he would either really like you or he would hate you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I don't think there would be a whole lot of gray area. Or if you were gray area, he would be simply ambivalent to your presence.
Mm-hmm.
Orion. I think it would be situational. I have to be honest with you. I think if Orion pulled one of his dick moves on him, I'm sure that he would have come to the conclusion that this guy's an asshole, and would have hated him.
Mm-hmm.
He might even have, if he pissed him off enough, he might even have challenged him, which
Orion
definitely
would
would
have
have.
had fun with him.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure.
I'm not gonna lie. If I had the information now, and this whole thing happened, Orion would have legitimately pretended to lose. He would have pretended to lose and then just pocket sand. He would have like pocket sanded or something and then just grab him by the belt around his chest and just BAM! Knee him in the groin and keep on doing that. He would have kept on doing that and then just like wrestled the axe out of his hand.
Yeah, and I can see.
He definitely would have pulled some shit where it's just like, yeah, I'm not nearly as strong as you. I don't need to be.
I could see Keith turning to you and at that point and going, "Can I double rage?"
He probably would.
No. He probably would. Fuck! Can I double rage?
Oh man, yeah, I can totally see that. I can totally agree that he'd be like one or the other. I can totally see that he'd be flippity flip flip. I think he would
He would
try.
have he would have had a ton of fun during the undead invasion,
Oh,
right?
he would
Because
have a blast.
I can guarantee you he would have been taking out those zombies like one hit, step, one hit, step, one hit.
Maybe not one hit step, but yeah, he would have had a. I think he would have. I genuinely think he would have gone to the gate. Like he would have voted to go for the gate and defend and help.
I have to
Because
be honest. I have to be honest. If I don't know if someone would have put up a fairly decent argument for going to the gate, then Roland probably would have gone.
hmm
But he kind of was so focused on, hey, we need to uh, remove the source of this whole invasion, that he was a little bit myopic.
I honestly don't remember if anyone gave me a reason why you thought that the source of the problem was in the castle. I don't remember anyone mentioning why. It just kind of felt
Well,
like it.
if you
At a
recall,
distance, it kind of
I did
felt.
do a roll. I did do a roll. If you recall, I did
hmm
do a roll. Um, well, what at least as far as rolling goes, um, I did do like an insight check on on um, on her behavior,
hmm
right? And you said, yeah, no, she's acting very strange,
Yeah.
which really like tipped off okay, hey, this is something that we need to take note of in Roland's mind.
hmm
So that's kind of what made her suspicious to him in the first place, but he didn't want to do anything until she actually tried something.
Fuck the
Yeah.
level 21 arena.
Yeah. So
Moving
yeah,
on.
I can totally I can justify that to an extent, but I will mention that it was something of a meta knowledge because the only thing you had on her was that she was acting suspicious for a cleric.
Mm-hmm.
With the information you had on her, the only thing that you could possibly gather from that is that maybe she's not an actual cleric.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe she's just using that to garner some undeserved gold or something like that. But it
Yeah.
is what it is, and ultimately you just found out quicker than
I
you
mean,
probably should have
well,
that she was
and
possessed.
he just did come to the conclusion earlier that she was suspicious,
hmm
and seeing as she was probably the only one in town who was suspicious, um, yeah.
Little did you
So he
know
kind
it
of
was Snake the whole time.
yeah, right. Which is why when we managed to grapple the cleric to the ground, the spirit came out. Minor details, right?
hmm
Yeah.
But yeah, so in regards to like characters, we'll go with like a couple more. Uh, how about in the place that would have been boring to him? How do you think he would have reacted to Alvin's family?
These people are loud. I'm out of here.
Fucking maybe.
Yeah, that's what it would have been. I mean, I'm
Probably
fairly
yeah.
certain that yeah, he probably, you know what? I'm gonna go out and walk around the town, see if I can see, I don't know. Gnomes are good at making stuff. I'll see if I can find some trinkets or something.
Yeah, maybe. Maybe.
Maybe try and find a magic shop.
hmm Do you think which one do you think he would have more interest in? Rawl, Abelock, or Bloodloon Drowning? The three
Mm.
from not
Yeah, I know
from,
who you're.
but in the Hunter's Hall.
Well, let's see. What do you find
And
more
for
interesting?
the
I think
yeah.
he would have been impressed with Rawl.
hmm
There's no question about that. Anyone that can like um, go toe to toe with a T-Rex is definitely going to have his respect.
Prying
Um,
open the maw of a T-Rex that's holding someone else.
right. Yep. Yep. Minor details, right? Um,
He may or may not have
yeah.
been
Just
moving 90 feet per turn. No big deal.
details. Details. Um, he might have. He probably would have found Abeloth the most interesting, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that was definitely an interesting deformity, and he was a well, he was a spellcaster, wasn't he?
As far as you're aware, that's what the
Yeah,
staff is for.
right. So I
Most
mean, yeah,
most figures that carry staffs in D&D are typically broadcasting that, hey, this thing can cast spells. Watch the fuck out.
hmm
Either that or you're a monk, and if you're a monk, the staff is just a pole.
yeah, that'll crack your skull open.
Yeah.
I I actually did see I did watch a video um on fighting with a staff, and I was actually a little bit surprised because in all these martial arts movies and shows they have someone working like from the middle of the staff and hitting someone with either side or in a fury of blows or something like that, but apparently you would use it much more like a pole arm
Oh, yeah.
where where you could spin around and hit someone with the end of this 8 foot pole and dent their skull.
Oh, yeah. Like that's something that a lot of people don't. Well, okay. This is coming from someone who has a passion for movies and an understanding that if you haven't seen something, movies are the only thing you've got
Right.
for what something should be or what something can be. So when I tell you this, keep in mind that you can have those rule of cool moments, but for the most part, you have a responsibility to be as accurate as possible to whatever you're portraying.
hmm
So when it comes to combat, someone with a sword going up against someone with a pole arm, good luck. Because here's the thing: if you use the staff like a polearm and two-hand swing all the way down with 8 foot of wood, if you try to block that with a one-handed weapon, you're fucked.
Yeah.
You're done. That thing is going to go through your cheesy defense and hit you on the face. Now, if you have a two-handed weapon, it's far more likely that you could block that. But again, not likely, because all of that momentum is being built up in 8 feet of force, which is one of the reasons why larger swords are, well, they dominate the battlefields. It's not some sort of compensation for anything. It's literally, no, bigger is better in war.
Yeah.
In war, bigger is better. Like even the concept of a sniper rifle is like, oh, it's a pinpoint accuracy thing. No, that bullet is going through you. What's left
Yeah,
of you?
behind you.
It's gonna go. It's gonna go through you, or what's left of you after it goes by you. Gonna hit the guy behind you, the tank,
And the guy behind him.
and the tank that's right over there. It's gonna bust off a couple pieces of that. And so
Right.
when it comes to weapons in medieval time, it's the same principle. So I honestly debated on whether or not to give us like a number of characters pole arms instead of like swords or whatnot. But I ultimately decided that for what they were, swords were a bit more accessible to them.
Well, yeah, if you're on the battlefield, well, let's take a page from the Book of Goblin Slayer, right?
Mhm.
If you're on the actual battlefield, like out in a um out in a meadow somewhere, and you're fighting something. Yes, you have a pole arm. You're gonna have a lot of advantage. Um, on the other and yeah, you'll be able to do some serious damage with that thing. But if you're in a dense forest, a pole arm is going to be a disadvantage because you start swinging that thing around, you're going to be hitting trees, branches, bushes, and it's everything around you is going to slow it down. Whereas if you have like a short sword, and it's the same thing if you're in a cave, right? You can't be swinging around a halberd in a cave
Well, that's
and
why you're
expect
stabbing,
right.
and that's another thing that opens
But
up
you're
the
not
discussion
getting the full effect of
where,
the weapon then,
oh,
right?
you are. Oh, you are.
I mean, you
'Cause
could.
you're at 8 feet away from me. Oh, is your sword only 3 feet long? I'm just gonna keep on poking you like this.
Yeah.
Now, granted,
Well, the
there's
thing
still
is,
the
though,
argument of getting
in the
inside the
in
reach, and I'm not denying
in
that. But
in
The
the
yeah.
on the well, even on the battlefield, right?
Hmm.
When you had lancers and polearm people, right?
Hmm.
Um, when there was a crush of battle where two lines came together, yes, they would start out with their polearm and they would do effective damage, as where they were. But as soon as things got into close combat, they would drop it and then draw their short sword because most people had, the long sword or the polearm and a short sword along with it for the close combat stuff because you don't want to be hitting your your army buddy next to you when you're swinging your halberd. Now,
This all
what the
depends
small
highly
commander would do, of course,
on which battle we're talking about, in which era we're talking about,
yes,
and
yeah, when and
like
when
what
and
part of the
when
continent or other continents we're talking about. Because obviously you'll be able to find things that prove your point and disprove your point based on which tapestries you're looking at, depending on which historical documents you're looking
mhm.
at, and
Well, and if I actually if I once they did start to refine the line of battle techniques, the people in the front would have a short sword and a shield, and
mhm.
then the rank behind them would be the ones with the pole arms.
That is one
That
tactic. Yes.
yeah. So
Root of All Beers has said that you created 3 Thanksgiving-themed D&D monsters.
oh god.
Yeah.
So
I'm gonna
okay.
mention
Hold
this.
on,
I
hold on.
had
Let me
the
let me guess.
idea.
Let me guess. One is based on a turkey.
Mm-hmm.
Another one is based on a cornucopia.
Pilfering fowl, the prowling poultry, and the royal turducken.
Sound like a bunch of chickens to me.
I had an idea for a couple Halloween-themed monsters, but the only one that I got somewhat off the ground was the pumpkin beholder.
That would have been cool.
It would have been cool, but I ultimately ran out of time, so I just
Hmm.
went with the dragon for the
Well,
moment.
you could do the well. Let's see. There was the
There's
you could also
always
have done
next
the
year.
yeah.
There's always next year. And I would have taken this time to think of some Christmas themed monsters, but something else will be done for
Oh,
Christmas.
so interestingly enough, there is an old Russian fairy tale
Oh,
about
Russian fairy tales are good.
well, and this one was specifically for children.
Hmm.
There was actually a
Now, are we
what was
talking
it?
German children or American children? Because they
Well,
are
they must have
very two different breeds.
they were well Russian children actually. So let's see if I could. I honestly think that they called him Pumpkinhead, right? But he was actually like a giant,
Hmm.
right? He was a giant that was like 20 feet tall, and he had a giant jack o' lantern on his shoulders, and he would eat children.
Mm.
You know, just not if they're naughty, just like straight up, just like eat children. And I guess the there were these and like the two kids in this particular fairy tale were so fat that they had to be rolled around, right? No, seriously, they're like a brother and sister, and they were so fat that they had to be rolled around. They couldn't walk, and I guess they were rolling down the street or rolling down the lane one day, and 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 then like Pumpkinhead appears, and he grabs the first kid and like stuffs him down his stuffs him in his mouth, and the kid was so fat that he didn't fit. So like Pumpkinhead like spat him out, and then like the parents got there and they like threw a potato. They threw a big potato at Pumpkinhead, and he swallowed the potato, and it got stuck in his throat, and he died. So no, that's what it was. But like I said,
Baked
it was.
potatoes, the savior of mankind.
Oh, I'm telling you, man.
Are you sure that's not an Irish fairy tale?
I'm very certain. Yes, it was very much Russian. Uh,
By the way, Beers is very glad that you enjoyed the royal turducken.
Give me the stats on those things. What do they have special abilities? Do they have like special attacks or what?
I do not know. I'm gonna look this up actually.
Tell you what, throw the link in the Discord chat.
All right. All right. These are the items. Okay, races, miscellaneous, tongue of the unwilling. Yeah. Yeah, this is just the one I've got already is the table of homebrew items. But
Ah,
I'm sure I'll be sent something in the future.
mm-hmm.
But anyway,
Okay.
back to the subject at hand, and we'll use the last remaining hour on the Almighty because there's not a whole lot to go off of there, so that'll be quick.
Yeah, he
Um,
was. He was. I mean, he was a cool character.
mhm.
I think he could have been awesome if he was with us for more than like what 2 sessions.
Do you think Tiberius would enjoy the brother or the sister more? Halanos, the leader of the Hunters Hall, or Saris, the seer of the Hunters Hall?
I think Hollis would have bugged him.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, he probably would have been like something about that guy just bugs me.
people, you guys don't seem to like Halanos all that much.
I mean, as a player, I think he's a cool character.
Mm-hmm.
Roland doesn't have any issue with him per se. Roland's a little bit confused,
Mm-hmm.
you know, for reasons that we don't necessarily have to go into here. Um, I mean, and he was a very gregarious and friendly type person, you know. So along those lines, he doesn't have any issue with him. But I don't know. I think he would have bugged Tiberius.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
the guy who doesn't invade your mind would have bugged him, but the woman who does would have been a-okay.
I don't know if he would have been. Don't know if he would have been cool with her, but she might have unnerved him a little bit if he would have had sense. Well, yeah, if he would have had enough sense to be unnerved.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. For some other reason, I now I'm just imagining Tiberius trying to seduce her.
Yes, seduce the limbless woman. Yeah, I'm sure it'll go over
Yes,
great.
she has no arms or legs, but man, but God, can she writhe? Yeah, no, I don't know. Uh, yeah, no, it would.
So more of a non-issue than anything else. I'm
Yeah,
getting
I
from
think
you.
so. I think so. Yeah, he would have been like, she'd have been like, I can peek in on things. You know, I can look into your mind and see things at a distance that you can't even comprehend. And he'd be like, well, great, go ahead and watch.
Yeah, I can kind of see that now. Actually, I can kind of see that. So let's see. There's a couple more things, like one or two more things I might want to ask about Tiberius before we move on to the Almighty.
You know,
Um,
I'd be willing to bet that in the combat with the T Rex, he probably would have tried climbing the thing's back and just smashing its skull in. I can
maybe,
see him. I can see him trying to do that.
maybe, maybe. Let's see. This it's a very strange thing because Tiberius was around for as long as he was that there's not nearly as many situations where we can just ask, "Oh, what do you think you do about this?" Because there's just like in the terms of like events, there weren't as many that he wasn't a part of.
Yeah, but he didn't really take much of a forefront role in most of those situations. You know, most of the
He
time
was
it
very
was.
passenger rather than driver.
Mhm.
He really was. Uh, I think. Hmm. Oh, here's a question that we haven't asked. Do you remember more or less the epilogue character designs that I've made of the current party.
I do remember some of them. Yeah.
Okay, so
Well,
this is a
the
question.
ones that we played.
Yes. So this is a question that has no real bearing on the character itself, but it's a last question before we move on to the Almighty. What do you like? Assuming that you guys all survive and you've all saved the world in the campaign, what do you think Tiberius's epilogue design would look like in contrast or in continuation of the design that you saw Tiberius have here? And I know full well that you don't really use Hero Forge all that much, but
Like, what do I think his final design would have been?
yeah, like after the campaign would have been over and
Well,
stuff like that.
first off, he probably would have had a mount,
Mm-hmm.
right? And he probably would have tried to do something a little more creative than just.
This
He
is
would
true
have been.
because the pendant did ultimately resemble the horseman, and the horsemen have mounts. What kind of mount do you think you'd have? That's a
Well,
good question. I didn't think about that.
yeah, he would have. I know he would have tried for something other than a horse because he definitely
Mhm.
wanted to go for something unusual.
Do you think he would have tried for the T-Rex?
Um,
Or do you think he
no,
would have gone for
because
the owlbear?
well, you can't ride an owlbear like a mount.
Oh, you can. Like in the monster manual, it explicitly states that with patience and time, you can tame an owlbear to be rideable.
What about a periton?
A periton, I don't know if they're large enough.
For a gnome.
As long as I understand the rules, and I honestly could be mistaking these from previous versions, but as I understand the rules, as long as a monster is like one class larger or one size larger than whatever's trying to ride it, it can, in theory, become a mount, or at least be ridden.
I get that. I get that. I'm just saying I don't remember if the peritons were large enough to do that because you know I'm
Mm-hmm.
thinking about wingspan here. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, they're a medium size, so yes, they are too. They would be too small.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, he might have tried for the owlbear. He might have tried for the T-Rex. Um, I get the feeling that, and I'd have to look this up again because it's been a while. I don't think I've ever actually looked into the statistics of how you could tame something to be a mount. But I think it would need to be like X amount of intelligence, nothing higher than Y amount of intelligence, and it needs to be either your alignment or neutral or something like that
Mm-hmm.
because you don't want a conflict of interests.
Right.
But
Well, horses
given
aren't all
given
that
the wide
intelligent. So.
array of beasts and monsters, what do you think he would have at the very least tried to go for if given the
Are you
choice?
kidding? He would probably go as epic as possible. He probably would have gone for a dragon.
Now, how about realistically?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
realistically
Well, no, no,
speaking,
no. But you know he would have gone. He would try to do a dragon.
yeah,
Realistically, though, that's hmm.
a cockatrice.
They're too small, aren't they?
They are, but I like to think of it as a funny joke.
Hmm. Interestingly enough, we could have tamed a periton uh,
I'm not convinced you could
for
train a
Elvin.
periton. I'm not convinced you can because a periton's favorite meal is the heart of an adventurer.
Yeah,
He is
they're
an
they're they're
evil
they're
aligned creature.
they are chaotic evil. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that would have been funny though.
Those Romans,
That
buddy,
would.
but we don't talk about that.
What? All right then. Yeah. So
Don't feed the trolls.
I think
Uh,
I'm
hmm.
actually having a hard time thinking about what he would aim for.
Oh. Giant elk.
Hmm. You really think you'd go for the giant elk?
You know what, now that now that I'm picturing it, yes, I think a giant elk would have been yes, because that is a huge beast,
Mm-hmm.
unaligned, and it has charge attack and then ram attack.
Well, keep in mind, and I had to research this for Hilda, the Valkyrie I played.
Yeah.
Unless, uh, so whenever you are in combat, like mounted combat, you can't actually have your mount engage in attacks at the same time
Mm-hmm.
because it takes an action to command the mount to do something other than go here or go there.
Mm-hmm.
Now you would need to dismount to allow the mount to do whatever it wants in the tactics that it is trained in.
But you see, yes, which would make sense.
Mm-hmm.
But I
So
can,
technically speaking, he could do that and use its ram and attacks and everything like that if he dismounted, but it would also technically speaking kind of be getting rid of the
well,
point of having a mounted combatant.
yeah. Well, but I could see him like riding that elk, well, just because of the simple majesty of how it would look. He'd be like, you know what,
Mm-hmm.
that'd be really cool. Um, and I could see him, riding into battle on a giant elk, having the elk ram the target, and then him taking the rest of his turn to um, dismount from the elk, and then just rage, so he can attack from one side and the elk can attack from the other.
I think he would just use it to ram, bonus action rage, and then next turn just attack from mounted combat position.
Mm-hmm. I can see that too.
But okay,
Yeah.
so mounted combatant giant elk. Okay, I can see. I could get behind that.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think he would be more armored, or do you think the whole Conan the Barbarian thing would have gone to to the extreme?
I think he definitely would have taken the Conan the Barbarian vibe.
Okay.
I think he would have, he might have seen if he could have like bracers of armor,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
which would not necessarily count as
Yeah.
actual armor.
Mm-hmm.
So he would still, it
Bracers
would,
of defense.
yes, which would raise his defense and allow him to still get that Constitution bonus on his AC.
Mm-hmm. All right then.
So yeah.
But yeah, this part was about Tiberius, the half elf barbarian, a very direct character, a character that sadly didn't make it as long as he probably could have, and depending on who you ask, it's either a good or bad thing that the player's gone. I always kind of I always kind of wonder what would have happened had he stuck around. I didn't really have anything against the guy. Only that I wish he wouldn't be on his phone. Um,
Well,
I
let's
feel like
be
he
straight up honest. That is kind of disrespectful. So
and it is. I'm not trying to make light of that, but it is one of the unfortunate truths that
and I think it would have been nicer if he actually had, like engaged a little more in role playing.
I think that one is just coming to terms with the fact that he was a very new player. You know.
Yeah, there was definitely that aspect as well. There was definitely that aspect to it. I'm not, I won't deny that at all. But,
Mm-hmm.
um, like it would have been nice if he would have, relaxed a little bit and then started role playing along with the rest with the other two of us that were actually role playing.
Yep.
Though I suppose you could call it that Kalu's player was also role playing, but it's not all that hard to role play someone terse and and quiet.
This is true. Ultimately, I do think that the story wouldn't have gone in the direction it did had any of the players who had left or been asked to leave, stuck around.
Mm-hmm.
I I will say that while Fiona inspired an entire culture, and Osiris inspired the first actual like campaign hook, Tiberius was the catalyst for the Horsemen's involvement, ultimately speaking. And I feel like even with Tiberius being gone, had he not done what he did and had he not engaged the way he had, we probably wouldn't have the Horsemen as we do now.
Mm.
And we probably wouldn't have had the Herald, being connected to them.
Mm-hmm.
Sacks.
But it's a sad fact that as we go further and further along in the Tales of the Lost Players, the overall impact to the story is both lessened and increased into two different extremes. Because at the beginning, I had to design the world around these characters and how these characters belong to the world. But as it goes even further, the characters actually impacted the world and more of a response to that, and it's just kind of nostalgic to think about.
Yeah.
But
Well, and it is an interesting storytelling tool to just kind of sit back and reflect and see exactly how certain characters did affect the way that the storyline went.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But one last question before we move on to the Almighty and the hour-long final stretch.
Mm-hmm.
Ultimately, what do you think about this design for Tiberius? Do you think I should change anything? Do you think I should edit anything that's already there? Or, like, what is it that you think about this design?
I thought the design was pretty good. I liked, the good color combinations, and I agree with you that I also, whenever I pictured him, bare chested,
Mm-hmm.
just like shrugging off whatever thermal extremes might be there, and just like just laughing at all of the lesser mortals that had to use more clothing.
Uh-huh.
And then I do like I do like the book that you gave with us, and I do wonder if he would have at some point in time like multi-class into one of the slightly more bookish classes like wizard or warlock or maybe even cleric.
I honestly feel like he would have taken your path in the sense that he would have stuck with Barbarian until the end.
Okay.
I honestly think that he would have left the actual book reading stuff to role playing sections rather than reflecting it in his class.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But
Now, does Hero Forge, does it let you do war paint?
it does not.
Okay.
I don't remember if I heard this or read it somewhere, but supposedly they are planning on adding that detail in the future, where you can select paintings and stuff like that, where you can add details, whether it's damage to the armor or scars or something like that. I don't remember where I read that or where I heard it, but supposedly that's coming in.
Okay. Let's see. What I could see him doing is using like tattoos, like getting tattoos of power.
I kind of think
Because
I kind of think that if I had the option to use tattoos right now, I probably would have given Tiberius tattoos, because he just, like I said, the whole Conan the Barbarian thing, a lot of whether or not he actually had tattoos in the movies or the comics, you just kind of figured that guy would have some kind of tattoo given where he is.
Yeah,
So
but this is like further on in the character development. I think he probably would have ended up having some adding some tattoos of power to increase his strength or his constitution or something like that.
Yeah.
You know, when you think about it, giving a barbarian that amulet of constitution would be like absolute overkill.
The amulet
Or
of health.
amulet
Hmm.
of vitality. Yeah,
Yeah, most definitely.
yeah,
Now,
that would have been just like over absolute overpowered.
so other than the tattoo stuff, is there anything you think that I should change or add?
Mm, no, actually, I think the armor is very appropriate. You know, like the bracers
Hmm.
are very appropriate for his character and for his class. I think it makes a lot of sense that he would have like a piece of metal then just like tie it to his arm. You know, that just makes sense. The image of the axe is very close to what, interestingly enough, very close to what it actually is
Hmm.
in the DM guide. Um, and you know he already has the silver and blue for the Silver Bear Guild. So um, not really, unless you want to like change the pose to where he's like actually raising the axe about to crush something. But I mean, but the pose that you have him with is decent anyway. So
All right then.
no, it's that's a decent image of him.
Well, thank you very much. And with that out of the way, the last hour will be on the very first of the villain campaign that we've got going on. The character of Karen Fear, the Almighty. He was a tiefling cleric, chaotic evil, who
Mm-hmm.
worshipped the god of travelers. Now, some background story for this is that the villain campaign was created explicitly for the purpose of continuing play when we didn't have everyone available for the hero campaign. Because at the time, we had about 6 or 7 players, and on more than one occasion, for a couple of weeks in a row, players weren't able to make it, and we either had to call it off, or worse, they would say that they could make it,
And they
the
wouldn't
rest of us
show
would
up.
get there, and would never show up, so the rest of us who were there would
Well,
just be sitting around.
and
So I had the
as I
idea.
recall, there were a
So
couple of instances where we actually sat down and did a little like map creation or other stuff like that
that was yes,
instead,
that was one session where we sat down and drew out a map, and
because it
yes,
was just you, me, and Matt at that point in time.
hmm it was yes, there was just the three of us, and I didn't have enough for the villain campaign at the time, so we just drew up the map instead. Now, ultimately, this game design kind of fell apart when we got down to only like 4 players or something like that. And so pretty much everyone was able to make it there at that point. And if one player was missing, we would just continue the hero campaign and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the villain campaign setting is 300 years prior to the events of the hero campaign, set during the course in history known as the Leviathan War, a time when a neighboring continent's invading force visited the continent of Valnuren.
Invaded the continent, not just visited.
Oh, they visited first, then invaded.
Okay.
And the player characters were all a part of the same organization that I allowed my players to name, eventually settling on something called the Ghost Rangers. And their mission, and I let them know their mission right off from the bat, you are specifically tasked with locating and retrieving, dead or alive, deserters and turncoats to the Leviathan Legion.
Mm-hmm.
And that is essentially what they did from the get-go.
And we were damn good at it. Thank you.
That is also true. Bits of backstory would be implying that the Ghost Ranger force started at maybe 20 members or so, maybe 30. But over the 5 years that the Leviathan War was taking place in, the numbers would ultimately, of course, just due to bad luck or overwhelming odds, be dwindled down to about 7. Now, the reason why it was 7 was because there were supposed to be 7 players, but with the players ultimately leaving or whatnot, that even that number was dwindled down to essentially being whatever numbers of players we have left at the time,
Right.
which essentially left it to 3.
We had 4 for quite some time.
We had 5 for some time actually,
Yes.
but we just never had all 5 in one session at the time.
Well, we did have 4 in
Yes.
many of the sessions.
We had
It was-
4
it
in
was-
many of the
it was-
sessions, but we never had all 5. But
Yeah, because it was Smoke, Wraith, Breach, and Faceless.
and Almighty.
And yes.
So these 5 characters were the Ghost Rangers that actually made an official appearance, had official stats written out, and officially did stuff.
Yeah, did stuff. Yeah. Sorry.
And the idea of the villain campaign was less story driven and more mission based. And this continues even now, where the story they don't really affect the story. Because the story of the Leviathan War is a war.
Yeah.
These guys aren't necessarily major players. They are
most of what we do is in the background.
Yeah, they are the cleanup crew in the background to try and prevent the enemy of the Leviathan Legion from gaining too much of an advantage. And while certain scholars might remember them in the future, they're basically a footnote. They're just a force that the Leviathan Legion utilized to great effect while they were active. Now, in the earlier sessions of it, they were tasked with finding and retrieving a Medusa who was supposedly giving information to the enemy. Ultimately, they found her, fought her. She turned herself to stone in order to avoid giving out any information from torture. But they eventually found out that she was giving away information, but it wasn't necessarily to the enemy. They would find out later that the man she was giving information to was a third party.
Now, we haven't discovered that yet.
No, you did. Because you found out it was Draith. And Draith does not have... And you also found out...
But we don't...
This was a long time ago, so I don't expect you to remember it, but I do remember telling you that the woman who's naming herself Tiamat and Draith want to kill each other. Now, as far as they're aware, they have no interest in the war outside of that.
Okay.
So I do know that I do remember telling you that bit of information, that those two don't have much involved in the war other than killing each other. But so that was the first mission that they went on. As a result of a previous mission, they had acquired a number of magical items, one of which was a strange stone, which after activating basically turned into I think it was a 24-story tower.
Yeah.
A 24-story tower that has, think of it like a chess rook on the exterior. And on the interior, the interior,
right?
The interior is basically an octagonal type of, building, a tower, with a single spiral staircase going up, and then going up, and then going up, with breaks in it to reach the new floors. And from every floor, past the first one, are 3 carvings of door frames. The whole tower is stone, and nothing else but stone. Even the chandeliers that are floating in mid-air at where you would expect a chandelier is made of complete stone. These rooms react to what you want them to be. And as soon as you enter and want it to be something, it extends outward and becomes a stone version of what that is. It doesn't have
But
anything. For example, if you wanted it to be
but
a
it does
bedroom,
keep in mind that this does not change the external appearance of the tower.
that is also true. It is a pocket dimension, so to speak.
Yes.
So if you wanted to have a bedroom, you would have the stone framing of that bedroom. You would have a stone bed frame. You would have a stone cabinet for your, like a closet or your clothes or your weapons.
Thankfully,
But you would not
you won't
have
have
a mattress. You would not have a blanket. You would not have pillows. You would not have anything other than the framework of what is required to
You'll have the
justify
basic
that.
you'll have the basic a basic stone frame of the things that you need. But anything softer than stone, you're gonna have to supply yourself.
Near one of the higher floors, say about 4 to 5 floors up, there is a very specific side room. This side room contains a globe that is spinning on its own, caught inside something of a basin, surrounded by liquids. It is a teleportation room where you can basically pick a spot on that globe and go there.
Mm-hmm.
And the stones,
Oh, don't forget the plinth.
the pocket stones that you can pick
Yes.
up from that area, act as homing beacons, which you can teleport back to that specific room. Now, how long it takes to recharge them, the players have not actually uncovered.
Discovered.
Not that they've really needed to, because they're typically teleporting to a
Right.
place for a while. But that was the main gift that I had for the players.
Yes, and it was a very cool concept. We spent like probably 3 or 4 sessions just creating rooms and discovering other aspects of this tower.
You definitely used an entire session, or the majority of a session, literally just discussing what rooms you would need and making them.
Mm-hmm.
You most definitely did that, and you had quite a lot of fun writing them down.
Oh yeah.
But after the tower was constructed and many rooms were made, they found that their home base, as in like the base in which the Leviathan Legion has set up shop, was under siege by redcaps. You would later uncover Draith for the first time,
as I understand
as he decapitated the commanding officer of the Leviathan Legion. After fighting him, and
that's what you get for giving him a freaking Vorpal sword.
I know, it's great. After fighting Draith and supposedly defeating him, the man explodes into a fiery wrath as a phoenix takes his place. From that point on, they uncovered more and more information about a traveling woman by the name of Elodie. Elodie Olmsbane.
Elodie.
She then hires the Ghost Rangers to accompany her on a little side quest. After reviving the commanding officer and stealing some of his stuff before that, they mount up on a skyship and go to the desert, where Elodie leads them through the desert to meet her contact, and they are besieged by Yuan-Ti, who, strangely enough, don't attack her at all. After almost facing most certain defeat, they manage to pull through and defeat the remaining Yuan-Ti, and Elodie applauds and heals them, telling them that it was a test to prove that they were strong enough to handle
heal
their
the
mission.
Yuan-Ti. But she doesn't heal the Yuan-Ti, so wow, they do have a very different outlook on life, that they don't, they will just throw themselves at whoever that they need to, for no apparent reason.
They then met the lady who was calling herself Tiamat inside an underground temple of sorts that turns out to be a large laboratory.
Yes.
filled with monsters, both dead and alive, with tubes sticking out of them, needles being put into them, and, shall we say, notes upon notes on what makes them tick.
Mm-hmm.
And the Lady Tiamat herself sits on a throne right in front of a mountain of gold that would make Smaug drool. And she hires them to acquire 3 distinct monsters. The only
Or
monsters that... Well, yes. 3 that are relevant right now, because I forgot what the 4th one was.
let's see here.
There was the Iron Golem. I know that. I think there was a Beholder.
The Iron Golem is the one that we're going for first, I believe.
That is correct. The Iron Golem is first on
So,
the list. But the point of the matter is, she is sending them out as collectors. They are to bring these 4 monsters back alive, because dead, there's only so much she can do.
Right. So we need to collect a Beholder,
Mm-hmm.
a Hydra,
Mm-hmm.
a Guardian Naga, and an Iron Golem.
Yep.
So.
And that is more or less where we left off the last time the Evil campaign was made.
Mm-hmm.
The character of Almighty, I believe he was there for the fight against Draith, wasn't he?
No.
No.
No. He was there though for the fight against the first fight that we had against the
The Medusa for sure.
Nope, he wasn't there for that.
Wasn't he there?
No, he was only there for like
the
2
Herald.
Like, the Herald.
That's right.
Yes.
The Almighty fought our first attempt at introducing the Herald, supposedly an ancient god.
Yep.
Who may or may not be directly linked to madness. So that's more or less the villain campaign in a nutshell. It's less story-driven and more mission-based, but it does kind of fill in the gaps of certain characters and where they may or not come from.
It did give us players a chance to play around with characters that are significantly different from our own, to kind of create
significantly stronger, significantly altered versions, and allowed you to test out other classes and races.
Yep. And while Fiona stumbled upon the one of the not, I wouldn't say ideal, but one of the almost broken combinations of the game with creating a half orc fighter. Well, I suppose that that is probably to compensate for the barbarians, ability to shrug off half damage for just about everything.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of stumbled upon the
gnome's ability to avoid wounds.
Nope. The halfling.
Halfling.
Yeah, that's right. I just stumbled upon
the ability to shrug off natural ones.
Yes.
While playing a wild magic sorcerer.
Yes. So, yep. Nope. We're not doing any wild magic ever. Because as soon as I roll one of that, you know what? Nope. I'm going to change that. We're going to switch that to some other role.
So, Almighty had the fewest overall sessions. Due to the very nature of the villain campaign as it started,
and he was
basically the only players that were involved with the story at first were the ones that were here every single session, and Almighty's player was just one of them. That was one of the reasons why the villain campaign started out in the first place. He had a job that was very demanding of him and was very inconsistent in when it would allow him to leave.
He had 2 jobs at the time, if I recall correctly.
He only had the one, but the job that he had didn't have a time when you could leave, other than the shift lead had to say you could go.
Yeah, well, that's due to the vagaries of that particular business.
Yep.
You could be extremely busy, and then the same time the next week, it'll be dead. So you can go at whatever time, So But
and which is
yes.
one of the things that is very, very understandable,
Hmm.
very understandable. However, the Almighty was the most unique in the fact that, if I remember correctly, he was the only tiefling in the villain campaign, and he was the only
Well,
healer.
aside from the unicorn,
He was the only healer.
yes, we had no healers.
The
We had
villain
no healers in the
campaign,
villain campaign.
the hero campaign started with a number of players that had the possibilities of having healing magic or healing effects. That didn't stay that way for very long, but the villain campaign started with every member being very combat, you know, kill the enemy first, heal up later, with the
Yep,
exception of the
best
Almighty.
defense is a good offense.
With the exception of the Almighty, whom did use his healing spells quite
Well,
effectively
and
when he was
I
around.
think when yeah, right. I think when he was designing the characters, like, well, what would be useful for the campaign? I think we're all like, we need a cleric because we don't have any healing. We're all just sipping potions all the time. So,
Yeah.
well, plus, I mean, to get into the character's backstory, if you recall, he was actually supposed to be the brother of a character played by the player who
Osiris's
played
player, yes.
Osiris and
Hmm.
later on the vampire.
Yep. I
So
do remember that was being tossed around. However,
yeah,
she
and
was unfortunately the other reason why the villain campaign was made, in that it was actually kind of rare when she came around.
hmm
Although
and
I
and
do sometimes wonder what would have been made. I
oh
genuinely.
oh, I know what he would have done.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah. They told me the character they planned was going to be a Beastmaster Ranger,
Ooh.
and yeah, she
That's
was going to have
right. Yes, I
yes,
remember because I was
and she was going to
specifically
have
asked
a
what kind of pets would be allowed. I remember that now.
yep, and she was going to have um a boar.
That's right.
She's going to have a boar,
Mm-hmm.
and by the name, and she was going to call it Bacon.
Oh yeah, I remember now. That would have been quite entertaining to see.
And when I think about it, it probably would have behooven that particular character to multi-class into rogue because the 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 boar has the ability to knock a an
Yep.
opponent down,
Mm-hmm.
which would have given the ranger advantage. So then
Yep.
she could have just added the sneak attack damage to whatever attack that she did.
Mm-hmm.
So
Oh,
yeah,
absolutely, absolutely. That, and moving on from that, other than having like uh, this sibling relationship with someone else, the Almighty was most definitely one of the well, sorry, had the potential to be one of the most interesting characters because despite being chaotic evil, he's dealing with a very kind of neutral god whose
yeah.
only real connection to the Almighty as a character is the fact that he's a very trickster, prankster type of traveling entity.
Hmm.
Now, ultimately, we can only speculate how the Almighty would have affected the overall campaign because the campaign is still pretty fresh and new. Although I have to admit, the excitement for the campaign has been brought back to life with one of my players asking explicitly, "When are we going back to it?" So I
Is
don't know.
that
Alvin?
is that Ed Elvin?
That's
Oh
Ed.
yeah. Uh-huh.
So I don't know
Uh-huh.
if he's contacted you about it,
Well, I
but
think
probably
no,
not.
he hasn't, but I'm fairly certain because he
Mm-hmm.
he rolled up that that no the
Tabaxi.
Tabaxi,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, the Tabaxi warlock, and
Blue Moon
unfortunately
Waning
yes, and unfortunately uh
had
his
1-2 sessions with him, and then we had
yeah,
to get locked down.
but the his first chance to show everyone what his character was made of was kind of pathetic. uh,
Not necessarily.
I mean.
It wasn't
It,
that he
it,
couldn't
it,
have. It's just that he decided to announce his presence after teleporting away from sight.
mm-hmm. Yeah, not the yeah, not the wisest move, but
Mm-hmm.
I think he probably wants to be able to play that character a little bit a little bit differently. Get him
Yeah. But
yeah.
keeping on
Anyway, but yeah,
point, keeping on
yes,
point,
on Almighty.
the Almighty is going to be fairly quick and simple because again, it's not a whole lot has happened. I can definitely say that he would have been very, very down for destroying Draith as quickly as he could, and
Oh yeah,
probably in as most a bombastic way as he possibly could,
uh huh.
because of just who his character was probably meant to be. Uh, I believe that he would have a strange fascination with Elodie, if I'm totally honest. I feel like he would have had a fascination with her and an almost loyalty. Not enough to
Yeah,
break his bond with the Rangers, of course, but it definitely would have been there. I
yeah.
feel like Elodie
A
would
little,
have piqued that
strain,
interest of him.
a little strain on that particular relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Um, I know that LED managed to piss off Smoke when
Mm-hmm.
they first encountered each other.
Yep.
So, but
And I do
so,
believe that
so
he would have
for
been
the audience's consumption, one of the ideas that was proposed by one of the players was that given the situation that we were in, the Ghost Rangers should all choose
code
pseudonyms.
names.
Yeah, code names. So, I mean, we
Hence why
refer.
we have the Almighty, why we have someone named Smoke, Wraith, hence why those names exist.
Yep.
Elodie has the ability to see their true names and calls
Yes.
them by it.
Yes. Which when you're trying to have at least a modicum of anonymity, especially with some of the actions that you need to take, especially in Smoke's case because he's
Technically a
not the,
turncoat himself.
yeah, he's not the most proud of what of everything that he's done. um, but he sees it that he's done some things that are necessary in order to achieve his goals.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the choosing a pseudonym, a code name, would allow him to, in his mind, allow him to, perhaps have the chance of coming back into, the old life without the onus of some of his past actions. But so, which is why he got a little bit irritated at
Mm-hmm.
Elodie. Yeah, but
Without
you know, I
knowing
think
a
I think
yeah.
I think you're right though, because he may have Almighty may have seen a bit of a kindred spirit
Mm-hmm.
in Elodie. Someone who appreciates the applications of power,
Mm-hmm.
if you will.
Absolutely. Now, without knowing more about the character in question, or without having more sessions with the character, we are back with how we're handling the first two episodes of this series. That we can really only speculate what the Almighty would
Yes,
have done. I do know that
unfortunately,
he had, outside of the evil campaign, we do know that he found it very amusing when a certain unicorn kind of joined up, in a matter of speaking.
momentarily for a couple
Yep.
sessions.
And
Yeah.
we do know that he was more or less excited at the prospect of these villainous missions. Unfortunately, just because of the very nature of why the villain campaign happened, he didn't have as much opportunity to play in it.
Hmm.
But beyond that, I believe that he would have been very pissed off. Not necessarily Tiberius pissed off, but I do believe that he would have been very suspicious of Elodie after being attacked by the Yuan-Ti.
Yeah,
I do believe
absolutely.
I do believe that he would have no longer have been quite taken with her, but I do believe that he would have had a massive amount of respect for the woman calling herself Tiamat. I do believe that he would have been very intrigued with her and what she was doing. I believe that he would have been very down for the idea of going on these missions to collect specimens and monsters. And I feel like the only other characters worth noting were the pirate captain that flew the flying ship,
Mm-hmm.
and
That got us to Tiamat. Yep.
mhm, and the subordinate that Elodie had in her employ, the very
Iona.
the very shy, very timid Iona.
Mm-hmm.
And
That that Smoke managed to scare the crap out of.
oh, you terrified the little fucker. Oh, she was scared for her life. I do.
Ironically, she wasn't in any danger at all.
Of
But
course not. Of course not. You don't want to piss off your employer by killing one of her employees,
no, no.
or in this case, servant.
Mm-hmm.
I do
Either
not
way.
believe that he would have had any
Yeah.
interaction with the captain, because the only one who had an interest in the captain was Smoke, and that was purely just to get his cannonballs.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Well,
Iona, I
the
believe.
grape shot cannonball specifically, but
I know, but still, same concept.
yep.
Now, for Iona herself, I think he would have had a passive interest. It would depend on whether or not the player actually cared about
Mhm.
subordinates or whatnot. But I think the character would have had something of a passive interest in Iona and why she was the way she was, or who she was
Probably.
working for.
And why she was working for her.
Exactly. I feel like he would have had admiration for the army that Tiamat had acquired for herself.
I don't know. I mean, you can respect the fact that a person had acquired an army, but I mean, the question is, I mean, what would be his opinions of Yuan-Ti and snakes in general?
This is
You
also
know,
true. I feel like as a tiefling, he would have had more. Uh, I feel like he would have been more inclined to like them more so than the humans in this party, because that was something that I did specify when the villain campaign was made. The primary invading forces are Dragonborn, Tiefling, and other races that are not common. So,
Mhm.
technically speaking, Kenku are uncommon. You could justify them. Tabaxi, stuff like that. Goliaths, things like that.
Mhm.
Surprisingly enough, 2 of the 5 initial players that actually did have playtime were human, and 1 was a halfling. So we were actually split down the middle between common and uncommon. We essentially decided that if you were common race, you are a turncoat and a traitor to Val Nurin, and if you were a dragonborn or other races that weren't common, you were native to the Leviathan Legion's homeland.
Now, Faceless was human, wasn't he?
He was. Faceless and Breach were both human.
Right. Breach was local. I think Faceless was. We could have honestly, because we didn't get into his backstory too much, but we could have, in theory, proposed that he was actually from a different land, because coming off of a pirate ship, you can really be from anywhere, really.
But
So you can
regardless,
make that argument, yeah.
But regardless, the Almighty was one of the only 2 at first
Mm-hmm.
of the starting 5. The only one of 2 that was actually from, for sure, the native land of the Leviathan Legion.
Yeah, the Almighty and Wraith, if I
Mhm.
recall correctly. Wraith also was from the homeland of the.
He is a black dragonborn from that land.
Yep.
And I think that ultimately, I feel like the more mission-based campaign would have been far more up the Almighty's players back. His alley.
Yeah.
I think he would have had a lot more fun in the villain campaign than he ever would have in the hero campaign.
Yeah, probably. I found it very interesting about how many people in the hero campaign played characters that were either neutral or how they tried to, or even sometimes even
They were trying to play the bad boy.
Yeah.
They tried to play the bad boy far more than they probably should have. And then in the villain campaign, you wouldn't even notice because they're all fucking evil.
Yeah.
But I noticed that too, and ever since I put that in there, I've noticed a lot fewer inclinations to evil characters.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think it's an interesting point of fact that a lot of players want to play the evil character on some level. They just don't have an opportunity to do so.
And I do wish that we could get into a little bit of Smoke's backstory because he is a little bit of a sociopath. But we'll leave that for another time.
Indeed.
Uh,
The Almighty was. Oh, how do I put this? He came and went so quickly.
yeah, we didn't really have too much of a chance to um, really appreciate and get to know the character very well.
He did have a glorious fight against the Herald, and he even attempted one of the techniques that a cleric can obtain at level 10, Divine Intervention. Ultimately, he failed because it's only a 10% chance that it'll fucking work at 10th level. But it did manage to summon forth an Eldritch Horror that fully introduced something that is still alive to this very day, which is insanity points. Essentially, it's a Call of Cthulhu-esque system where you roll a d20 and you match that to your wisdom. If it is lower than your wisdom, you are perfectly safe. If it is higher than your wisdom, you take a mark of insanity. And every 3 marks of insanity gives you a skull. That skull is a sentient being that floats around you and tries to convince you to do stuff. So, yeah.
Okay.
Technically speaking, without the Almighty, we probably wouldn't have gotten to those skulls in the time that we did.
Yes, and then Wraith has 1.
He has 3 marks of insanity, so he has 1 floating skull, which
Yes.
did ultimately save him.
Yeah.
It ultimately saved him because the skull realized what was about to happen with Draith,
Yep.
and was able to convince by forcing Wraith to run.
Uh-huh.
But yes. But yeah. That is more or less the Almighty, because, again, combination of the fact that the Evil campaign hasn't had that much involved in it as everything else, and also because the Almighty only came in for like 1 or 2 sessions, that's pretty much all we got for him, other than the fact that he's a tiefling cleric of the Traveler. He was originally supposed to have a sibling. I don't know whether or not the player ever decided on which sex she was going for, but
Female.
Okay.
Female.
Okay, so so the Almighty was going to have a sister, and those two were going to have some banter back and forth. And although it would have been,
cool.
it would have been funny as hell to have 2 tieflings and a pig. But yes, I think the battle against the Yuan-ti would have gone much differently had you guys had a cleric.
Oh yes. Oh yes. He definitely would have at least given their Tabaxi Warlock a resurrection.
Mm-hmm. Well, not a resurrection.
At least some HP back.
Mm-hmm.
Like healing word, at least.
Mm-hmm.
And I think at that point he probably would have gotten a little more used to how the clerics do in combat, because, in all honesty, as Omen has showed us, clerics can be stupid OP if they're played right.
Oh yes. Omen has showed us that. Giorno has shown us that.
Uh-huh.
Clerics are just broken bitches.
And I hear that with Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, one of the more recent books that have come out. There are 2 new druid subclasses which apparently are a little bit OP. I haven't done any studying on them yet, but you can bet your bippy that I'll be getting that book once once it comes out. Actually, pardon me.
It has come out.
Once I can get access to it, because I stopped by a local store,
Mm-hmm.
and because they said that they were going to have it this last week, and I stopped by the store and to say, hey, do you guys have Tasha's Cauldron yet? And they said, well, did you pre-order a copy? And I'm like, well, no. And they said, well, unfortunately not, because apparently 60 of the books that they received had broken bindings, and that
Ooh.
they had to send them back to the publisher.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah.
That sucks.
So, but I did get my name on a list.
Mm-hmm.
So they will be notifying me once it is in fact ready. So
The reason why I was hesitant to buy the book when I heard it was coming out was for the obvious social political reasons that were rumored to or were going to be put in there. And the reason why I am most certainly considering getting it now is because our lovely friends over at Kotaku hate it.
I'm unfamiliar with Kotaku actually.
Kotaku is a quote unquote gaming site that basically only exists to talk about social politics.
Oh, okay.
So,
Oh, okay. Good. Good
mhm.
then. Yes. So it should be a decent book then.
The rumors that they were going to be doing the whole races don't actually affect anything stat wise or anything like that was somewhat true in that it is an official optional rule now,
Ah.
which
Well, yeah,
which quite
because
frankly is kind of a given regardless.
yes.
It's kind of a given regardless. Dungeon Master's rules go.
Yeah. Dungeon DM's Fiat. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the DM's rule is law. So
Well, and yeah, I mean, in all honesty, I mean, let's if you remove all the racial bonuses and
and context
yeah, then you
like
might
culture wise.
yeah, at that point you might as well just be playing GURPS,
Mm-hmm.
instead of D&D. That is one of the hallmarks of what D&D is.
Mm-hmm.
You play a dwarf, you get in addition to constitution and um,
And what have you.
yeah, whatever. If you play an elf, you get a addition to this and that. If you're a human, you get
You
an
get
either
all this or all that.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And humans are, I wouldn't say that they're OP, but I mean,
They're
in all
definitely
honesty,
underutilized for how good they are.
they are really good actually. Well, I mean, and plus either every other character you get basically three additional points to distribute. Either a set area, or because you'll usually get like a +2 in this category and a +1 in this category,
Mm-hmm.
right? The humans, you either get basically +5, so +1 to all, or +6. You get +1 to
Mm-hmm.
all stats, which is in effect twice as much what everyone else gets. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
or you get +2 to one stat and
Plus one
and
to
a
two stats
well +1 to two stats and a feat,
and a
which
skill.
yes.
But yeah, but because of the fact that Kotaku hates it, I'm thinking of picking it up.
I actually, honestly,
Because
I just want
regardless
to get
of
into
and
do the druid class.
this is just for a clarification for anyone who might be getting the wrong idea. Regardless of what political stance you take, doesn't actually matter too much to me in the context of the game. When I want to play a video game or a board game or to watch a movie, I don't want to hear a political lecture. I don't want to
Yeah,
hear something about social justice, for instance. I don't want to hear about social inequalities unless the story is about that. Like Schindler's List. That is a
yeah.
great
Oh,
example. That's an example of a movie
social
that does
equality.
that very well because it's historically telling the tale of Schindler and what have you. You can come up with examples of movies that do this well, but that's the point. They're movies about that, so you know what you're getting into when you pick it up, when you buy the game, when you watch the movie. When it comes to D&D, however, we're talking about a fantasy world where there are literal dwarves and Goliaths. I get the distinct impression that skin tone and sex are the least of your prejudice worries. We're talking about literal demon spawn here and goblins. We're talking about people who are descendant from actual gods. You know, like, no, stuff like that would be so downplayed it's not even funny. And
Irrelevant. Absolute irrelevance.
and so the rumor that this next expansion was going to include stuff like that was very off-putting to me because, you know, it just kind of rubbed me the wrong way. It's like, hey, I'm playing this game to tell a story and to, fight monsters. I'm not here to hear about, the inequalities of X group versus Y.
Mm-hmm.
But
And
hearing that
let's be honest here. In a fantasy environment, right?
Mhm.
If someone is casting a fireball at you, it doesn't matter if they're female or male. It doesn't matter if
if
they
they've
got
got
dark
horns
or light
or
skin.
feathers.
Yes. It's just you're still taking that fireball damage.
Mhm.
So yeah.
But yeah, so that's why I'm thinking of getting it. And whether or not you are Republican, Democrat, Libertarian, whether you're in the middle somewhere, or if you've got your own thing, don't matter to me. I just want them. I just want all of them outside of D&D. I want them all out.
Yep. And this is a game.
Mm-hmm. So
Besides, it's a place where you can it's a place. It's supposed to be a situation in which you can just sit back, relax, have fun, and not
roll dice.
necessarily and roll dice.
like admire the miniatures that a certain someone painstakingly painted for you guys.
Absolutely.
But
Absolutely.
all
right.
We can move on to the next thing. Actually, speaking of painting, I will hand paint all of the figures that are purchased for the Lost Players. Now, some of them are going to be fairly easy. Others are going to be a bit more challenging just because of the specific colors that I have in mind. Given what you remember of Tyberious and the Almighty, which one do you think I should buy? Like, which one do you think I should give to the player?
Well, I think you were correct in your original estimation that it probably should be Tiberius because he had a lot more time to play the character
Mm-hmm.
and a lot more time to get to know the character and have fun with him. So he has a lot more memories with Tiberius versus Almighty.
Okay.
As cool as as the character of Almighty is and would have been, I think Tiberius would be a better selection for the gifting to the player himself.
Okay. That's fair enough. And given what you remember of the Almighty's design, what do you think about him, and would you think I should change anything about him, like color-wise, costume-wise, equipment-wise?
No, it makes sense that his the color scheme is based on
The sigil of the trickster, yeah.
Yep, on the sigil of
Traveler.
the traveler. Yep, and um um and I know that he did fight with a shield.
Mm-hmm.
So and yeah, well, a mason shield were his
I believe he
equipment.
had the Mace of Terror.
I think so. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. The Mace of Terror, and yeah, what were the others?
I think it was just a normal shield.
Mm-hmm.
I know that Tiberius had the axe of giant slaying.
Yep. Breaker or Breacher, I forget which one.
Breach.
Breach was a human fighter,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't remember what his weapons were.
I think he had like wasn't his shield? His shield was special, but I think he had like a normal sword.
Okay.
Yeah.
That'll do it. Yeah.
So, well, and his because I think he didn't. I think he took shield mastery as a feat,
Hmm.
I believe. So, um,
Well, regardless,
well,
I'll try to
I mean,
remember more
he got
about.
his name.
Yeah.
He got his name because in one combat, we were trying to get into a castle, and he and this is
The backstory.
yeah,
Yeah.
backstory. This isn't something that actually happened in
In game. Yeah.
in game. So, but yeah, he we were trying to we're trying to get into a castle, and it just wasn't happening. So he basically put his shield in front of him and charged, and managed to break down a piece of the wall, so which allowed the invaders in. Um, so yeah, that's how he got the nickname Breach.
All right. So that's food for thought. I'll have to think about that.
I mean, he's still I still work with him, so I could ask him if he remembers what special equipment that his character had.
Okay. That'll do it. Uh, I guess from that point, uh, I'm fairly certain that knowing the player as we do, that he'd prefer playing the Almighty, at least in the setting wise.
Mm-hmm.
But I can't even ask you if you agree because I'm fairly certain you do.
Oh, yeah. He definitely would have enjoyed playing Almighty a little bit more because at that level you have a lot more options for actions that you can take, spells that you can cast, all that fun stuff. Whereas and it actually does allow you a lot more dimensional depth to the character. Whereas with Tiberius, I mean, there's not a whole lot going on there. Okay, woohoo! I have a big axe. Rage, smash. So
I mean, if you can do it while remaining, well, I don't even know if he knows this is a possibility. You could ask the player which figure he would have
well,
wanted.
yeah, I honestly I have no issue with I could even unfortunately our shifts never overlap, so I really don't see him all that often anymore.
Hmm.
Uh, but um,
You could
yeah,
pop in one day. It's like, oh, I forgot something. Here I am.
well,
Oh,
I could straight up tell him what's going on and tell him that you're planning on gifting people with miniatures of their character, and would he prefer Almighty or Tiberius?
okay.
I mean, unless you want to surprise them with it.
I
If you
mean,
want to surprise them with it, I could be a little more. I could be a little more subtle, but
I'm not against the surprise aspect because I've already flat out told Fiona's player that I'm thinking of getting it for her.
Mhm.
But I do think it would be a pleasant surprise for Osiris's character, you know, given how things ended up between us.
Mhm.
But I do think it'll be a pleasant surprise for her and her roommate.
Mhm.
But I think those two are the only ones I would like it to be a surprise for.
Okay.
But
I mean, I could still find out with time.
yeah,
I mean,
I'll
in
let you
time, I
choose. I'll
okay.
let you choose if you want it to be direct or subtle.
Subtle.
Yeah,
Well, like I said, like if it doesn't bother, if I'm not bothering to be subtle, then I can easily ask a friend
Whoa.
of his to ask him.
Hello there, robot. When did you get here?
Uh oh, when did the bot show up?
No, you were.
Oh, did it?
You roboted
Oh,
out there for a moment.
oh, okay. As I was saying, if I don't care uh, about being subtle about it, I can easily ask uh, a friend of his to ask him
Mm-hmm.
because I still do work with Rory, and Rory, still kind of hangs out with Keith sometimes, and they do cross paths a lot more often than I do with Keith. So,
Okay. I mean, so fun fact, and this is just a little bit of detail. The reason why I'm not making the hero characters for Adam and Rory is because Adam already has Giorno,
Mm-hmm.
and I am actually already using Lark. Lark's model was already purchased and is technically being utilized. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm using that as an excuse to design the villain campaign characters. And
Oh, okay. So a quick aside,
yes.
if you will. So as we can see, the images of Almighty are you are going through shields.
Mm-hmm.
So I recently have picked up a few a few copies. Well, I picked up a few episodes of manga of Rising the Shield Hero,
Mm-hmm.
and that first really intricate shield that you equipped him with.
Yeah.
Okay, that was from Rising the Shield Hero. That's the cursed shield from Rising the Shield Hero. The pattern matches exactly.
Interesting. I
So
don't
I
remember
think,
which one it was, but
well, yeah. Too bad you can't pause it or rewind it.
I mean I can if you'd like. It'll
Yeah,
just
let's
be
do that.
I'll just have to find it. Oh, the intricate
That
shield.
one right there.
That one.
Yes, yes, that is. I'm fairly certain that is straight from Rising the Shield Hero.
I mean, whether it is or not is
But it's still an intricate shield and a nice
yeah.
looking shield.
Okay.
Yep. But so yeah, I'll ask. I'll find out which one. I assume that he would probably that he had more time with Tiberius. He probably would have enjoyed. You're right. I think he probably would have enjoyed.
The more
Uh,
mission-based storytelling than the
yeah, because I think we would have gotten into a lot more combat.
mm-hmm. the basic the basic difference between the hero campaign and the villain campaign is the hero campaign has a lot more leniency in what you can do. It's a far more open world experience than the villain campaign, which is ultimately speaking a linear experience.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very go here and do this. That's your mission. Go and do it. So it's very straightforward, and the plot will progress whether or not you succeed or fail.
Mm-hmm. Or at least the overall storyline will progress.
Yes, the overall storyline of the Leviathan War will progress whether you guys succeed or fail.
Mm-hmm.
From the beginning, the Ghost Rangers are in the background of history.
Yep. As is appropriate because that's where they should be.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And so I guess getting a closer look on this guy, assuming that he would prefer Almighty instead of Tiberius. Do you think the skin color and the horns are and the face? Because I didn't actually
The
know if I
horns,
should.
the
I
horns
didn't
in the
think
face.
I didn't know if I should give him a facial hair, but I felt like the character kind of fit well with the
Yeah,
beard.
yeah, I think it does. Yep. Um, I think the coloring on the horns is excellent. The skin tone looks a little gray to me.
Little
I
gray.
kind of like a little gray. Yeah, I kind of liked him a little bit better with the slightly more like orangish tone that you had with him before.
Okay, so far more red skinned
Yeah.
tiefling
Hmm.
as opposed to the purplish gray.
Yes.
Okay.
I mean that was my preference. If I run into him, I can ask him what color he imagined his skin to be.
This is true. Like I realized that most of the tieflings I've designed in this have been red skinned, and I kind
Hmm.
of realized, I want to try some different tones to this guy. And knowing the type of character he ultimately was going to be, the evil guy, I figured, let's just go a nice gray toned this thing,
Hmm.
you know. But yeah, if you think that the red skin tone would be much
It did
better,
look a little bit better. This he looks like he's been exsanguinated a little bit.
exsanguinated.
Yeah,
I,
like
I
he's
have
lost blood.
like I have I have never heard that word before.
Really? Okay.
Not once.
Okay. Yeah, exsanguination
Hmm.
is removal of blood. So I my mom was really into crime dramas.
Uh huh.
So we'd be watching them and they would talk about, oh, he died from exsanguination,
Oh.
which is a fancy way of saying blood loss.
Hmm.
So, all
That'll
right.
do it.
Any rate, yes, it will in rapid order. Any rate, I probably should sign off. So, um, Both models came out looking very well. The slightly purplish gray skin that has been kind of bugging me a little bit on
Okay.
Almighty, but I think that's you know that's a very good representation of what you know of what the character I think would have been.
Okay. Now, do you think, like, a paladin is one thing, but a cleric, you can kind of argue whether or not he would have a helmet. Do you think I should go back into Hero Forge and fiddle around with the idea of a helmet, or do you think I
Nope.
should just save that for Breach?
Save it for Breach.
Okay.
No, I think he looks fine without a helmet. Plus, I mean, when you think about it, as a tiefling, the horns do provide some kind of cranial cover. You're going to have to get a fairly decent shot in to not hit those horns.
I suppose that's true. All right. Now,
Which I'm
your
kind of surprised that they don't have that in.
well, if that were the case, everyone would fucking pick Tiefling.
Yeah,
Oh, +1 to my AC? Yes.
I know, right?
I feel okay. So obviously, you're going to be asking him, and you're going to be figuring out whether or not he would prefer one or the other. But if you were just to look at these two characters, and like you were going to choose more or less which one you were going to play, kind of like picking a pre-made character, which one do you think you'd go for?
Almighty looks so much cooler.
Oh, really?
Oh, he does. Yeah.
All right.
Oh, come on. Access to magic. I mean, don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong. Tiberius does look fully awesome, right? But Almighty just.
There's
I mean,
a bit of a level gap.
yes, yes. Almighty just looks cool.
Well, thank you very much. I try my best.
Right.
But
Well,
anyway, if you got to head out, then
I
this is
do.
it. In that case, thank you for joining me once again for the third session, Tales of the Lost Players, Tiberius, and the Almighty.
And let's hope that we can get Matt to join us next session.
All right. Next session will be another villain campaign character. Whether or not, do you think it should be both or one? Because ultimately speaking, Hero Forge right now has a Black Friday deal, and you need to make it before X date.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think we should go for a final?
I would say you should design them both.
Mm-hmm.
You should design them both, but then we should only talk about one.
Okay, spread them out a bit more. All right then.
Yes.
So in that
and you
case,
can always order the figures and then later on, just review the video.
I suppose that's true.
So, all right. Well.
So in that case,
to everyone listening, have a good night.
Have a good night, everybody, and I don't know what else to say. Have a good night.
All right. Yeah. Good night.